ANC's top six to meet following an NEC meeting yesterday, but still no clear indication who will the next deputy president be. The 13 suspects arrested in connection with the brutal killing of 5 police officers and a retired soldier in the Eastern Cape are expected to appear in court this morning. Police and traffic officials are monitoring the N2 highway heading to Cape Town at the airport approach following an early morning protest in Gugulethu.
For Shonga. Shonga drives! Oh, that is magnificent! Justin Shonga!
Orlando Pirates are the new chasers-in-chief in the ABSA Premiership after closing within 4 points of local leaders Mamelodi Sundowns.
Hello and welcome to Newsroom. I'm Shante Yankees coming to you live from our Auckland Park studios in Johannesburg. A lot coming up between now and 12 p.m, including the latest on the case of the police killings in the Eastern Cape, your views on the top stories of the day as well as news from the continent. I'm not alone. Marumo Kekana is standing by with all your sporting highlights. Very good morning to you, Marumo.
Good morning to you.
Sporting weekend-wise, highlights?
It's been an interesting one, and more especially locally, football-wise. I mean, we saw the likes of Kaizer Chiefs playing too, of course, and not draw against Bloemfontein Celtic out at the FNB Stadium. And now on the other side, now Orlando Pirates are now the chasers-in-chief in the ABSA Premier League. This is after they won ever so convincingly yesterday by 4-2. Now this makes things very interesting as now Sundowns is just leading by mere 4 points. Now PSL is going to be fired up going forward. This and more later on during the Sports Bulletin.
Your top story at 9 o'clock, the ANC's top six will meet today following the conclusion of the party's decision-making body's special meeting yesterday in Pretoria. It was speculated that there could be a discussion about a cabinet deployment among other points of deliberation. SABC's Morning Live sat down with Pulemabe, the ANC's national spokesperson, who wouldn't confirm or deny the rumour that Naledi Pandor could be the next South African deputy president.
Matters of prerogative on who gets to be appointed as whether it's deputy president, whether it's in cabinet and all of that, those are really one which is exercised by the president. Of course, because the ANC is a strategic center of power, there is an engagement between officials on a number of things, because in whatever gets to be done, the unity of the ANC must always reign supreme, which is very important.
It is. So was it discussed the past weekend at the NEC meeting?
Once the National Executive Committee of the ANC finds itself discussing cabinet deployments and all of that, you can just imagine. Individual cadres will then start nominating themselves there. What will that do? It will create.
But how far is the process in Datimabi? Are we likely to see the outcome of that particular issue today after the top six meeting?
No, I take it that the top six meet from time to time to attend to organizational matters.
This is their first meeting today.
What I can assure you of, no, they've always been meeting. What I can assure you of is that as soon as there is a decision and one that requires to be communicated to the public, I'm sure the president of the country will be the first one to do so, because once he has appointed the deputy president or whatever restructuring that would have happened at that level, he will convey those to the public. I don't think that we should really be preemptive on what needs to happen. What we can be assured of is that in the shortest time possible, there must be a deputy president of the Republic of South Africa.
Yeah, I don't think we're being preemptive. It's just, trying to find out the facts from you.
Yes.
And in terms of the cabinet reshuffle, is that issue likely to be discussed by the top six?
Well, I'm sure that if the top six discusses any other issue that could be a matter of concern, if there is to be a reshuffle.
Is it on the agenda, though?
Well, I wouldn't know. I don't sit in the top six, so I will be shooting ahead of myself.
Well, 13 suspects who were arrested in connection with the brutal killing of 5 policemen and a retired soldier in Congo in the Eastern Cape are expected to appear in the Congo Magistrates Court today. A group of assailants gunned down the on-duty police at the police station and allegedly blasted an ATM machine. Meanwhile, the leader of the Seven Angels Ministry at Congo in the Eastern Cape, Panele Mangoba, says he is certain that his eldest brother, Tandazile Mangoba, was involved in the shooting of the 5 police officers. On Friday, a shootout between suspects and police ensued, and 3 Mangoba brothers are among the 7 people that died during the incident at the church compound.
A community still reeling from the events of the past few days. The town is trying to get back to normality again. It was one of the most violent and deadliest weeks ever witnessed here, as criminals brazenly attacked a police station, killing 5 officers and stealing firearms. The mastermind is a local and a member of what many describe as a cult in a local church called the Seven Angels Ministries. His brother issued a message of condolence to the families of the deceased officers, distancing the church from his brother's actions.
It's painful what happened in the police station. I was not aware of it. I'm very disappointed. I'm very sad. I would say the community must just forgive us, because it's not all of us that were involved in that attack, no. And also I'm planning to engage with the leaders of the community to explain ourselves.
The shack behind me is where mastermind of that brutal attack at the Ngobo police station of Tuesday evening, Tandazile Mangoba, perished. He died during an exchange of gunfire with the police on Friday evening. Firearms stolen from the police station were also recovered in the shack. The 10 arrested suspects will appear in court. Meanwhile, the Independent Police Investigative Directorate has confirmed it is investigating the circumstances under which 7 suspects linked to the murder of 5 police were gunned down by the police. The memorial service for the officers will be held on Tuesday. Unatipin was SABC News, Engcobo.
Well, to make sense of all these developments that have been coming out of Congo, we are now joined by Zemke, who is, or rather was first exposed and initially exposed the church and has been following some of the developments around this case. A very good morning to you, Zemke. Can you take us through 2 years back when you actually initially did the story on the church? What did you find?
Let me actually take you to the early 1980s, Shante, because this church was formed in 1986 in KwaZulu-Natal, where the late Mr. Mangoba was the leader of the church at Mzimkhulu. And there were allegations that he sexually abused one of the young congregants, but he later won that case in court. But subsequent to that court case, people of Mzimkhulu chased him away, and then he opened this church here at Ngobo in his ancestral home. Now, he continued to operate until 2015, when he passed on, and his sons, the 7 sons who refer to themselves as the angels, then took over. The rules of the church, even in 1986, were that if you are a member of the church, you are not allowed to go to school. And but at that stage, people who were working, and they would take leave and come and stay at the church for some time. And when the leave has expired, then they will go back to work. But when the sons took over, they said they no longer use the Bible as an instruction of things they need to do at the church. They now communicate directly, spiritually, with their late father, who communicates with God in heaven. So they said the first instruction that the father has given them after taking over is that no one must go out of the gates of the church. It is then that the community of Nyanga tipped the media that the practices of that church were somehow dubious and suspicious. Then we went to expose the matter and the CRL Commission intervened, and the 7 angels were told to discontinue what was happening there. But it continued to operate 2 years later now, Shante. We have suspects that have been found in the premises of the church, and 7 of them were gunned down. And the existing leaders of the church who were not gunned down and who were not arrested on Friday have now handed themselves over for questioning. And today they are expected to be part of the people that will appear before the Congo Magistrates Court.
Now, this has definitely opened up a bigger can of worms, as it's not just killings now. What is the link between the Man Over Seven Ministries and indeed what took place on Wednesday night police killings?
The brother that we spoke to yesterday, Banele Mangoba, has confirmed that his late brother, who was shot in that 30 minutes gun battle between police and the alleged criminals, is the person who could have been the mastermind behind the killing of those 5 suspects. But now, Shante, you must remember that he was just telling us as the media, we don't know the statement that he made to the police, whether it is the same statement that he told us as the media, because he gave us that interview before he actually went to hand himself over. The link could be that the firearms were found in the premises of the church, and all of the firearms that were taken during the attack were found there, and the police only went to the church because there was a tip-off. So I think that's proof enough that there is some kind of link between the incident. And also another thing that I think links the church to the incident is that those 2 police officers who were hijacked in their police vehicle in town after that attack on the ATM in town, who were later killed and their bodies dumped next to Nyanga Senior Secondary School. And Nyanga Senior Secondary School and the church are just a street apart. So the bodies were a couple of meters away from the church premises. I think those are some of the things that police used to be able to follow their leads, that led to the arrest of 10 people, which is now 13 people, after these 3 other leaders of the church handed themselves over to the police.
Zemke, earlier on you mentioned that community members had come forward saying that there had been dubious activities taking place around the church. There are now media reports that the church may not in fact be a church but a cult. How much truth is contained in this allegation?
I didn't get your entire question, Shante, but I think what is important to also note about the church is that they have behind the premises of the church, there is a mountain which they often go to. They say at the mountain it's a sacred place where if you are sick, you go there and you stay in the mountain for a couple of days, and when you come back healed. What I can also tell you is that there were children that were taken from the premises of the church. There were also elderly people, and there are still those family members who are looking for their loved ones, for their relatives who have been disconnected with them for a number of years after they joined the church. So we have seen yesterday a number of people going to Nobo police station, asking if there are any people who want to be reunited with their families. They are saying that they've been trying for years to ask their family members to stop going to the church because they can see that it is not a normal church. But when we're speaking to the CRL chairperson, she said that there is no specific laws in South Africa that actually stops practices like that are being done by these cult churches. So that is the reason why we continue to see the mushrooming of these churches, and they all come with different styles, because now this one is saying they do not use the Bible. they sleep, and when they wake up in the morning, they are told what to do. And I'm told, Shante, that they were also telling the congregants that it is the end of days. It's 1,260 days left before the end of days. So people sold all their items, they sold their cars, their houses, and donated their belongings to the church because they were believing that it is the end of days, and when that time comes, they must not have anything that is outside the premises of the church. That's why they sold their belongings and brought everything that is materialistic and otherwise to the church.
Sure, those are some shocking revelations coming out. What kind of interventions have actually occurred from the side of authorities since your expose, which you actually made on this story on the church in specific 2 years ago?
The Council of Churches was involved, saying that in their ways of practicing the Christian religion, what is being done at the Man Over Seven Ministries is against what they stand for. We also saw the Department of Social Development fighting for the rights of children who were born in the premises of the church, who do not even have birth certificates. Some of those children, more than 13 children, were then taken from the church and put in a place of safety. And we also saw police officers, but at that stage, police officers did not open any cases because, as I mentioned earlier on, there is no specific law that is violated. But now I think this time around, now that there are people that have been killed in the premises of the church, now that there are alleged criminals that were found with weapons, and not just the weapons that were stolen from the police station, but we are told by the National Police Commissioner that even other dangerous weapons with blood stains were found in those premises of the church, which means a lot has been happening in the premises of those churches. But from what we heard from Ubanele Mangoba, he puts the blame on his late brother, Thandazile. So Thandazile is not here to be asked questions whether he is the one who actually was the mastermind behind the killing of the 5 officials. I think now, Shante, we can only rely on police investigations to uncover the real truth behind everything that is happening at Man Over Seven Ministries here at Nyanka Village.
Definitely. Let's wrap it up. SABC News reporter in Ngobo, Zemke, give us updates around the police killings that took place in Ngobo, as well as now what has transpired, what's been happening with the church and the link that some of the suspects have had to the church there, the Seven Angels Ministries. We will be giving you more updates on that story. Well, the ANC in Mpumalanga says that it will soon meet with traditional healers. This is in an effort to ensure the safety of people with albinism. The meeting was being prompted between the arrest of a traditional healer in connection with the kidnapping and murder of 2 children last week. One of them is a child with albinism. It is reported that the killings could have been related to ritual practices. SABC reporter Sibongile Mkani joins us now live from Nelspruit in Mpumalanga. Very good morning to you. Essentially, what is the latest regarding the recent case of the traditional leader who has since now been arrested?
Yes, good morning. The latest on the case is that the Sangoma, or the traditional healer, will be appearing in court tomorrow at the Witbank Magistrates Court to face those charges that have been laid up against him: kidnapping, 2 counts of kidnapping, 2 counts of murder, violation of a corpse, and intent to do kidnapping. And also we know that DNA samples have been taken from the families because the bodies were found decapitated. The 12-year-old Kabisile, the one with albinism, was found beheaded without a head. So they are doing DNA tests, even though the family is certain that those children are their kids because of the description and also clothes that were worn on the day, especially on the 1-year-old. They matched that description, but the police and authorities wanted to be 100% sure before they hand over the bodies to them. So this week we have those 2 developments, the DNA results that we're waiting for, as well as the court case.
Now, Sibongile, what would actually, there are reports saying that this is linked to possible ritual killing. What essentially would actually lead people to believe that that would be a ritual killing?
What has led to people believing that it is a ritual killing? It's because of the manner in which this incident occurred. Firstly, these two children were abducted or kidnapped at gunpoint at home in the early hours of the morning, around about just after 1 a.m. The armed men broke a window of the house and gained entry. One of the parents woke up and met them in the living room. They went straight to the one room where the 12-year-old sleeps at, the 12-year-old girl with albinism. They grabbed her, and the other ones went to the other room searching for another 1-year-old boy who has albinism. That boy was sleeping on the floor on the day, and there was another boy with light in complexion but not with albinism sleeping on the bed. So they took the one on the bed, thinking that it's the one with albinism. So that's one of the first thing that people are saying it's albinism, because they knew what they wanted. They never stole anything at the house. They only took those two kids, thinking that the other one has albinism. And then the second point is the fact that the bodies were found decapitated. We are told that the 12-year-old girl, the one with albinism, as I mentioned before, that she was beheaded. Her head was not with her body when she was found in that shallow grave. And some of her body parts, her breast, were also missing. And also the fact that a traditional healer has been arrested in terms of this. There is this myth that is going on that people with albinism have this special effect. If you get their body parts, then you become a stronger nyanga, or if you get that muti made of those parts, then you become powerful, which is totally nonsense. If I can say, scientists have said there's nothing. People with albinism are just like me and you, same thing. They have no special powers or anything. It's just a skin that is different to us.
And, based on your experience as a reporter and covering stories specifically linked to young children, how prevalent are the killings of children with albinism?
When we spoke to the people in that area, the community, this is the first of its kind in the area. We've heard of these incidences, but even in South Africa, they are not much. I know of a case 2 years back that SABC Cutting Edge covered in KZN, Kwamhlabuyalingana, where a girl that also lived with albinism was killed, and even there, muti killing was suspected. So it's not something that is usual, but though there are those rare cases, but it is quite prevalent in the African countries like Malawi, where cases of such people with albinism were actually being hunted down for these killings.
Now, based also on your experience as a reporter, how involved have you seen the social development side of it come in ensuring the safety of children, specifically amongst the vulnerable ones?
Well, I've worked on a story 2 years back where social development made sure that children that were taken out of the country and exploited in Malawi were brought back into the country. I know their core function is the protection of children. There was a recent case where the Minister of Social Development, Minister Batabile Dlamini, was involved in where they were ensuring, that was last year, where ensuring that children are not, corporal punishment rather, is banished at the homes, where they were protecting children even from us parents from beating them up if they've done something wrong. Another case in point, which is happening recently as we speak, there in Gauteng, at the North Gauteng High Court, where there are those Zimbabwean children that were brought into the country illegally. And the department took those children from that truck where they were packed in like sardines and were headed for South Africa. They were in South Africa from Zimbabwe illegally. They are undocumented. There were no parents. There is that court case now where the department is involved with the parents. The parents are demanding that they want those children back. The department is saying, no, we will protect these children. We are talking to the Department of Children in Zimbabwe, in fact, the government in Zimbabwe, where the department will hand over over those children to Zimbabwe. So those are some of the cases that the Department of Social Development has dealt with. There was another one last year again where we dealt with, there was a picture of a child that was badly assaulted here in Mpumalanga. That picture was circulating on Facebook. We went to the family to try and find out what had happened to the child. But when we got there, social development had already acted based on the information from the social media and had taken that child to a place of safety. We know that the department in South Africa, the children that come from foreign countries, your Mozambique, your Swaziland, and are undocumented, and they are arrested, the department takes care of them, and they are put in safe places, and they are afforded the same rights as South African children who are in the country legally, and those who are born here who are truly South African. So they are doing their bit, but also in this case of albinism, especially in this one that happened there, no one could have known. Even the parents, when we were talking to them, the family, they were saying that this one, they felt that they knew, in fact, they were sure that their children are safe because they were at home with their parents at night under lock and key. So there are those bizarre cases that are happening that cannot really be apprehended or prevented beforehand, like this one.
Indeed, let's wrap it up. Thank you very much, SABC News reporter Sibongile Mkani Olweni, live from Nelspruit in Mpumalanga. Of course, over the years, she has been covering stories of vulnerable children, giving us updates there to the horrible 2 killings of those 2 children, one with albinism and also its possible links to ritual killings. We'll also give you more updates on that. Well, protests continue in Gugulethu near Cape Town after angry backyard dwellers reportedly tried to take over land in the area last week. Well, a car was set alight in front of the popular Mzoli's restaurant on Sunday in ongoing service delivery protests. A supermarket near door-to-door of Mzoli's was also looted. This morning, the N2 was again temporarily closed due to the protest action. Police and traffic officials are monitoring the situation. Let's have a look at our question of the day here on SABC Newsroom. Of course, we've been asking you, what do you make of the developments around the Man Over Seven Ministries Church in Congo? Send us your comments on @SABC Newsroom. We'll have a look at some of your tweets. First, though, let's have a break.
Welcome to Media Monitor, the show that analyzes the big news stories that made headlines. We bring you robust discussions on stories that made headlines in the week, where we interact with media analysts to unpack these top stories. Join me every Sunday morning from 9 to 10 Central African Time as I bring you riveting news and analysis.
Stay tuned to Media Monitor every Sunday from 9 a.m.
Corruption both in the public and the private sectors needs to be combated.
Where there are clear cases of wrong that has been done, that must commence immediately.
Something is being done about corruption in our country.
Currency, even although it's strengthened dramatically after the ANC's recent elective conference, could conceivably go stronger yet.
He had a soul that would not be for sale.
Stay tuned to Your World for your final news roundup, Monday to Sunday at 21:30.
Welcome back to Newsroom. Well, the CRL Rights Commission, that is, says that there are many more religious leaders running institutions like the Man Over Seven Ministry in the Eastern Cape, where police killed 7 suspects allegedly linked to the killing of 5 policemen and a retired soldier. Of course, the question that we've been asking this morning is, what do you make of the developments around Man Over Seven Ministry Church in Ngobo? Continue to send us your comments. Let's have a look at some of the tweets that have already come through. Akasa says those kind of churches should be abolished. Comrade Tebe says criminals are using churches to hide themselves. Barry Martin on Twitter says that Seven Angels Church operated the same way as Boko Haram operates, so that church was a terrorism base, and that is all. Definitely, let's have a look at our poll. Today we're asking, should the government regulate the religious sector more vigorously? With just over 130 votes coming in, 88% of you are saying yes, 12% are still saying no. That's behind those police killings. And of course, it seems to have opened a can of worms now, as we saw that it was linked to the church, as well as having more than 100 people actually stationed at its base. Let's have a look at some of the tweets that have been coming through. Tabo Quincy Peter says, yes, because it seems like everyone is using churches to hide their sins and crimes, and it is not good for government to do so. Barry Martin says government should regulate the religious sector because there are too many fake pastors around, and this is very, very dangerous for communities. Exed Bantu on Twitter says anyone in South Africa can start a church. We can be gullible as the community. These are so-called desperate pastors know that we are desperate and they are exploiting it. Definitely. Let's have a look at our front pages of newspapers this morning from the continent. We'll start off here at home in South Africa. Well, the Citizen reports that the South African Federation of Trade Unions General Secretary Zwelinzima Mavavi has slammed the ANC, saying it has worsened poverty of the working class. Moving to Namibia, the Namibian says Namibian men who default on paying maintenance for their children could be forced to pay interest on arrears. This is according to a proposal by Attorney General Albert Kawana. And finally, in Swaziland, the Swaziland Observer reports that a Swazi traditional healer has been sentenced to life imprisonment in South Africa for the ritual murder of a 3-year-old girl at Ngobodozi area. What you can expect? Well, the South African National Defence Force is one institution that is still respected by many. We tell you this more after the break.
And later in your sports bulletin, Manchester United hit back to stun Chelsea in their Premier League at Old Trafford. Romelu Lukaku came up with a goal and an assist as Jose Mourinho claimed the bragging rights over rival Antonio Conte.
When life takes a different turn.
If I didn't eat the speak, he was going to evict me.
Your will to persevere is ignited.
I'm not a professional speaker, but I'll try my best to give you a word of inspiration.
He was just trying to provide for his family.
If you can't accept it, change it. If you cannot change it, accept it.
And a new story begins.
Made a resolve to myself. I'm learning something new.
Upilong, every Friday at 5:30. Be part of the life-changing journey.
Technology is used for both positive and negative.
Some governments block the internet in times of protest.
With this internet blackout, it's impossible for me to do it, so I have to travel to Douala.
This act is a true violation of the rights of citizens.
In Africa, people are always coming up with innovative ways to use technology to solve some of their problems.
The more interesting piece of technology is actually the artificial intelligence.
AI, it's utilizing data to make your life easier.
On Network, we give you Africa's technology and social media news.
For all your technology news, join Siphumelele Zondi every Saturday at 17:30.
Civilians are still trapped and awaiting aid and medical help after regime airstrikes pounded Ghouta despite UN ceasefire demands. The United Nations Special Representative in the Democratic Republic of Congo has called for restraint after 2 people were killed during protests. Thousands of demonstrators took to the streets of Brussels in solidarity with migrants and to protest against Belgium's government migration policy. Your lead story this half hour with some international news. Desperate civilians are still trapped and awaiting aid and medical help after regime airstrikes pounded rebel-held eastern Ghouta despite UN ceasefire demands. Well, more than 500 people have been killed in a major bombing campaign by President Bashar al-Assad's forces that has hammered the enclave on the edge of Damascus for over a week. After days of diplomatic wrangling, the United Nations Security Council on Saturday adopted a resolution calling for a 30-day ceasefire in Syria without delay to allow for aid deliveries and medical evacuations. The resolution raised hopes of stemming the bloodshed, but after clashes continued on Sunday, it was unclear how or when broadly the ceasefire would be implemented. Russia is a key ally of Assad's regime. In a phone call on Sunday, German Chancellor Angela Merkel and French President Emmanuel Macron used President Vladimir Putin to use his influence to reach a truce. They called on Russia to exercise maximum pressure on the Syrian regime to achieve an immediate suspension of air raids and fighting. The United Nations Special Representative in the Democratic Republic of Congo has called for restraint after 2 people were killed during protests against President Joseph Kabila. Roman Catholics in many parts of Congo attempted to demonstrate after Sunday Mass, despite a ban on protests and churches being surrounded by security forces. The Catholic Church has become the most vocal opponent of President Kabila, whose term in office expired in 2016.
Footage released by Union for the Congolese Nation opposition party showed protesters being dispersed by police as they marched from St. Pius Church in Kinshasa's Giringiri neighborhood. The head of the UNC, Vital Kamerhe, was at the church. Catholic and evangelical churchgoers across Congo had been meant to take to the streets following Sunday services. However, armed security forces surrounded Kinshasa's main churches and blocked roads, preventing most demonstrators from getting started and in some cases using tear gas and gunfire to disperse them. Witnesses who brought the body of the slain man to Kinshasa's St. Joseph Hospital said he had been shot by police outside a church in the Lemba neighborhood. Joseph Kabila has been in power since 2001.
Well, the head of the United Nations humanitarian efforts in Somalia, Peter de Klerk, has stressed the importance of enhancing communities' resilience in dealing with the effects of recurring droughts and famine. Well, during his tour of Puntland, de Klerk met with Puntland President Abdi Weli Al-Khas.
The United Nations humanitarian coordinator for Somalia, Peter de Klerk, arrived in Puntland's capital, Garou, and commended the drought relief and recovery efforts of the authorities in the northern state of Puntland, while cautioning that the current humanitarian crisis was far from over.
Today we specifically discussed the issue of the drought, which we expect may be imminent, and how we can mitigate the effect of that drought. How we can help the people who have been displaced in the previous droughts and other issues.
De Klerk said while 2017 was a good year in terms of a close cooperation to avoid worst impact of the drought, further effort will be needed.
We're seeing a lot of displacement. We're seeing the cities and towns in Somaliland growing, and more destitute people who have lost their livestock and lost their livelihoods coming to the cities in expectation of some support and some assistance. And as unfortunately the historical trend is, we will see many of these people not going back.
He highlighted that both emergency relief and longer-term resilience-building efforts complemented each other with a view to breaking the cycle of drought and famine.
Yes, we're going to have a drought. Yes, things are getting very bad, but we want this cycle to stop. We don't want to have every few years to launch another relief operation with humanitarian effort. We need to make sure that the country does grow its own food, it produces its own wealth so that people no longer have to rely on outside handouts.
De Klerk was visiting Puntland to meet with security planning and humanitarian officials from the local government, as well as representatives of civil society organizations, to discuss the current drought response and other challenges in the region. He also visited Hargeisa, the capital of Somaliland, where he met with various high-level officials and civil society representatives.
Well, thousands of demonstrators took to the streets of Brussels in solidarity with migrants and to protest against Belgium's government's migration policy. Some protesters held placards saying solidarity with refugees should not be criminalized and demanding asylum and migration state security. Theo Franken's departure from government.
Protesters rallied at the Maximilian Park, where many migrants seeking refugee status have been camping out since 2015 because of its proximity to the country's immigration department, which examines asylum requests.
Today we see a government that is proposing a law that will allow house searches. They are talking about house visits, but those are in fact police searches, which do not criminalize solidarity. But they target families who will have to cope with these searches, with the violence of these searches.
I think that they do not take into account the misery of people. The fact that there are not so many migrants, that the number of the ones already here represents just a small group compared with the entirety of migrants, that we can welcome some when there is no future for people in their country, when they escape from war and misery, that's normal. I would also escape if I were in these conditions. I would pay smugglers hoping there's a better future elsewhere.
A member of the Flemish right-wing party, Franken last year, made headlines by refusing humanitarian visas to a family of Syrian refugees from besieged Aleppo.
Well, back home, as South Africa prepares to commemorate Human Rights Day and the signing of the Constitution, one institution that is still respected by many is the South African National Defence Force, a product of the Constitution. Unlike Zimbabwe, where the army got involved and led the political transition, South Africa's most recent transition was left to the politicians. The pride of the nation, the SANDF, did not meddle in political affairs.
The first commander-in-chief taking the salute in 1994.
Please welcome Mr. Thabo Mbeki, the President of the Republic of South Africa.
And 5 years later, his successor, the second commander-in-chief, followed suit. It was during his recall, the South African National Defence Force demonstrated its respect for the Constitution. And again, a smooth transition for the third commander-in-chief. A short stint, and the fourth commander-in-chief took the reins. He was also recalled.
These are the men and women who have pledged allegiance to the Constitution. They've also pledged allegiance to the people of South Africa. And behind me is the equipment that they use to ensure that they serve with the dignity that the people of South Africa deserve. And on the other side is the man who has pledged allegiance not only to the Constitution, but has also said that he will uphold, protect, and defend the Constitution. His name is Cyril Ramaphosa, the Commander-in-Chief of the South African National Defence Force.
Again, the South African National Defence Force remained focused on its core function.
Your task is to protect the integrity of our democracy. Your task is to protect our Constitution. Your task is to protect the people of South Africa. And we are very pleased, General Shoke, that this defense force that you lead has remained committed to that task. I was extremely pleased just last week when I met on a one-to-one basis with General Shoke, and he assured me that this SANDF will never get involved in politics, This SANDF is there to protect the people of South Africa, whoever the Commander-in-Chief is of our country.
The pride of the nation as the country commemorates brave men and women in uniform, a proud moment for those who were part of the integration.
For us, country comes first. Doesn't matter who's in power, who's the Commander-in-Chief, country comes first. And therefore, the Defence Force or the Defence people during transformation was so smooth because that is foremost in our minds. Country comes first.
The force has also played a role in bringing about peace on the continent.
It's not about yourself, but the love of the country and the people of the country, and accepting our government policies, especially the foreign policy, where we were demanded to leave our own countries and go out and be part of the number of structures like SADC, AU, UN. Then also it demands that we need at least to empower ourselves in terms of education, training to be ready for that eventuality. And for us to save more lives, we've got to train a little bit harder than before.
And as the country commemorates Human Rights Day next month, it will continue to look up to the South African National Defence Force to protect the country, an issue that is enshrined in the Constitution. Sophie Mukwena, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Break here on SABC's Newsroom. When we come back, Manu Mukagana with all your sporting highlights.
Meningitis is a potentially deadly disease that affects more than 1 million people worldwide each year.
Well, it's an infection of the lining of the brain and the spinal cord. And it's caused by a variety of bacteria.
And also, importantly, with fungal meningitis, there's no transmission from person to person.
In South Africa and elsewhere in the world, the ministries of health have recognized this as an important disease to prevent. And vaccines have been introduced into immunization, routine immunization programs.
It's really important to prevent, and the best way to prevent is to have people know their HIV status, start antiretroviral treatment as soon as possible.
For all your health news, join Health Talk every Saturday from 9 to 10.
Welcome back. You're still watching Newsroom right here on DSTV channel 404. Warm greetings from the sports desk. Let's update your sports news. Orlando Pirates are the new chasers-in-chief in the Absa Premiership after closing within 4 points of lock leaders Mamelodi Sundowns. The Buccaneers produced a powerful attack to win by 4-2 against Chippa United on Sunday. A third win from their last 4 league games to send a warning ahead of next weekend's Soweto Derby.
From Mayambela as he ran it too far wide. Shot, oh, what a goal! Machupo on the turn. Did Marco intentionally drop his hand to make us to stop the ball? Not in my opinion. Up against him, Congo, and he just beats him. Marco's in there. This might be a chance for Shonga. They still haven't cleared. Mimela with some clever footwork. Shonga! That's a magnificent goal from the Buccaneers. And Ninzo, ball through the middle here. Chance for Rakhale, and it's snuck in from Masheko, his first touch of the game. Maela, another fine ball, goal, launch. Pirates are back in the lead. Lumbo, turn for Shonga. Shonga drives, whoa! Magnificent! Justin Shonga from the tightest of angles
And staying with the PSL, Abafana Base 10, the Golden Arrows brought an end to their winless streak in the Absa Premiership with a hard-fought 0-0 win over relegation contenders Eben Warriors Ajax Cape Town at the Princess Makoko Stadium in KwaMashu. Victory moves Abafana Base 10 5 points clear of their rivals, who next face Matsatsanza Pitori Supersport United in a midweek clash.
Ajax wanted to win so they can move away from the bottom of the table. Golden Arrows, on the other hand, were looking for their first win in 5 league outings since January. Danny Venter was denied by keeper Brendan Peterson on this occasion. Venter was a thorn in Ajax defense on the right flank, with the home side awarded a penalty after Ronald Lamula was fouled in the box.
Oh, that's just a missed opportunity. Was it a heavy penalty?
Limbigani Mzava stepped up, beating Peterson from the penalty spot to put Arrows in the lead. Ajax launched this attack late in the first half, with Arrows' defense dealing well with the danger. While the Urban Warriors gave an improved performance in the second half, it was Arrows that twice came close to scoring a goal. However, they were let down by wayward shooting on both occasions. In the end, Mzava's first half goal earned Arrows their first win since January. Pesinka to SABC News.
Now moving further afield, Manchester United hit back to stun Chelsea in their Premier League at Old Trafford. Romelu Lukaku came up with a goal and an assist as Jose Mourinho claimed the bragging rights over rival Antonio Conte. Here is how it unfolded.
Willian. Hazard. Back to Willian, it's a super ball. And it's a tremendous finish. Christensen's taken a whack in the face there. Sanchez and Lukaku! 1-1! Lingard! Off the bench, onto the score sheet. Who knows, it may even be...
South Korea brought the curtain down on its Peace Games on Sunday, with winter sports athletes dancing and singing together at a vibrant closing ceremony, though there was a little warmth between dignitaries from the United States and North Korea. South Korea President Moon Jae-in, who hopes to use these games as an opportunity to engage with North Korea. Despite the divisions and distrust between the two Koreans, they agreed to have their athletes march together at both the opening and closing ceremonies under a banner of unification. They also fielded a unified women's ice hockey team. Norway topped the medals table at this year's Winter Olympic Games in Pyeongchang in South Korea. The Norwegians finished with 14 golds, the same as Germany, but won a record 39 medals overall, 8 more than the Germans. The Russians' flag, absent at the opening ceremony, was again nowhere to be seen after the IOC decided not to lift the suspension on their country. And of course, what we're asking you is that what were your weekend sporting highlights? So let's see those, of course, comments that you send in to us. Michael Big M Sitole says, well, there's only one sporting highlight for me, and that's at Orlando Pirates, showing their class, hunger, determination, and muscle. I don't know what Coach Micho and Rulani are doing there behind the scenes, but they must keep it up and watch out for Justin Shonga. I guess everyone feels that way, even here in the studio. Some of our colleagues, of course, are the mighty Buccaneers supporters. This is also saying Proteas put on a good fight against a strong India side. I don't know about that, this is, I'm sure many South Africans will disagree with you on that. Barry Martin saying, Man United, congratulations to Man United for their 2-1 victory against Chelsea. Well done, boys. And of course, those were your comments, and we can keep them coming throughout the entire program. That's how we come to the end of your first installment of Newsroom Sports. Up next, Ndawayandon, Azitagazituan, standing by with your weather update.
Thanks very much and warm welcome. We are looking at the city of Cape Town. Currently, Sea Point clear and looking beautiful, but temperatures will be slightly hot as we are expecting temperatures to be in the high 20s going to low 30s for today. Lots of moisture coming in from the tropical regions sitting over the northern parts. You can see this thick band of cloud just sitting over the southern parts of Mozambique to some parts of Zimbabwe and the northern parts. That's your Limpopo, some parts of Musina as well. We are expecting lots of heavy falls in those regions, up to 80% chance of showers that may lead to localized flooding. Over the northern parts, up to 80% chance of thunder showers just over the whole of Malawi, stretching to some parts of Mozambique, Zimbabwe as well, going to Zambia. So if you are in those regions, please do have your umbrella with us. That 80% chance of showers may bring us some heavy falls that may lead to localized flooding and stretching to the northern parts of South Africa in Limpopo. Tomorrow, we're still expecting similar conditions. You can see some red markings along the coastal regions of Mozambique, stretching to the far northern parts of Zimbabwe, some parts of Zambia. We are expecting 80% chance of thunder showers going to the central interior of DRC as well. If you are in those regions, please have your umbrella with and be very careful. Some parts of Limpopo already flooded, and please do not attempt to cross any flooded stream. It might be very dangerous. A maximum of 27 in Pretoria, Polokwane. We are expecting 60% chance of thunder showers with a maximum of 23 degrees, and Bombela as well sitting at 23. Uppington at a maximum of 34. A warning of high fire danger going to the western parts. Cape Town, a maximum of 30 degrees is expected for today. In Bloemfontein, we are expecting some rainfall on Thursday going to Friday. Temperatures in the low 30s, but during the week, temperatures in the high 20s for most parts. Over Bulawayo, a maximum of 19 degrees and 27 for Beitbridge. Maputo will sit at a maximum of 28 degrees. Sunny skies expected in Windhoek. A maximum of 32 is forecast for today. Over Madagascar, we're still expecting some rainfall over the interior. Partly cloudy skies, isolated scattered thunder showers with Mahajanga sitting at a maximum of 31 degrees. Over the eastern parts, we're still expecting partly cloudy skies with isolated showers in Kigali with a maximum of 27. Lusaka, 28. Rainfall is expected, and Lilongwe as well. Mombasa, a maximum of 33, mostly cloudy skies forecast for today. Over the western parts, we're seeing Libreville at 26 and 31 in Kinshasa, Bangui at 31, and over the interior of DRC, up to 80% chance of thunder showers forecast, and be very careful in those regions. The Sahara Desert expected to remain clear, but over the coastal regions, up to 60% chance of thunder showers, but over the northern parts, just showers expected at 30% for today and tomorrow. You can see something heavy just along the coastal regions of Nigeria, but the Sahara remaining the same again. A maximum of 27 in Sana'a along the coastal regions. Damascus, we're still expecting cold temperatures in those regions with 18 and 15 for Tehran. That is all. Now you're done.
For your weekly dose of art and entertainment news, tune into Trends every Saturday from 12 to 1.
We take an in-depth look of all your stories of the day across the world. Stay tuned to Primetime News every day from 18 hours. News at 9. We go beyond the headlines of the day's breaking news to bring you all the angles and in-depth analysis of stories. We go beyond the surface, including on how it will impact your life. Join us every day at 9 to zoom in on the day's big stories.
The ANC's top 6 to meet following an NEC meeting yesterday, but still no clear indication on who will be the next deputy president. 13 suspects arrested in connection with the brutal killing of 5 police officers and a retired soldier in the Eastern Cape are expected to appear in court this morning. Police and traffic officials are monitoring the N2 highway heading to Cape Town at the airport approach following an early morning protest in Gugulethu.
Shonga drives! Oh, that is magnificent! Justin Shonga!
Orlando Pirates are the new chasers-in-chief in the Absa Premiership after closing within 4 points of local leaders Mamelodi Sundowns.
Hello and welcome to Newsroom. I'm Shanta Young. He's coming to you live from Auckland Park in Johannesburg. A lot coming up between now and 12 p.m, including the latest in the case of the police killings in the Eastern Cape. Your views on some of our top stories of the day, as well as news from the continent. Oh, if I'm not alone, joining us via your sports is Marumo Gagana. A very good morning to you, Marumo. Of course, what a headline. Pirates chasing down Sundown.
Yeah, now, I mean, there are just 4 points within getting there. Yeah. But hey, you can't take it away from Sundowns as yet. No, because, you know, Bafana style, with the quality of players they have in that team, they'll definitely make sure that come the next game, they want maximum points. And of course, breaking rights all over the country, all over, of course, the corridors, people talking about their teams and how they performed over the weekend. Of course, if you're Orlando Pirates supporter, you'll be talking about the chances of making it, at least catching up with Sundowns at the top of the log. And if you're a Kaizer Chiefs supporter, given what happened over the weekend, the goalless draw, you're probably now starting to weigh your options and being worried here and there. But of course, out in the EPL, we saw that a very interesting game between Manchester United and Chelsea. Manchester winning ever so convincingly. But this and more later on during the Sports Bulletin.
Our lead story at the top of the hour, the ANC's top 6 will meet today following the conclusion of the party's decision-making body's special meeting yesterday in Pretoria. It was speculated that there could be a discussion about a cabinet deployment, among other points of deliberation. SABC's Morning Live sat down with Bulemabe, the ANC's national spokesperson, who wouldn't confirm or deny the rumour that Naledi Pandor could be the next South African deputy president.
Matters of prerogative on who gets to be appointed as whether it's deputy president, whether it's in cabinet and all of that, those are really one which is exercised by the president. Of course, because the ANC is a strategic center of power, there is an engagement between officials on a number of things, because in whatever gets to be done, the unity of the ANC must always reign supreme, which is very important.
It is. So was it discussed the past weekend at the NEC meeting?
Once the National Executive Committee of the ANC finds itself discussing cabinet deployments and all of that, you can just imagine. Individual cadres will then start nominating themselves there. What will that do? It will create.
But how far is the
chaos.
process in Datimabi? Are we likely to see the outcome of that particular issue today after the top 6 meeting?
No, look, I take it that the top 6 meet from time to time to attend to organizational matters.
This is their first meeting today.
What I can assure you of, no, they've always been meeting. What I can assure you of is that as soon as there is a decision and one that requires to be communicated to the public, I'm sure the president of the country will be the first one to do so, because once he has appointed the deputy president or whatever restructuring that would have happened at that level, he will convey those to the public. I don't think that we should really be preemptive on what needs to happen. What we can be assured of is that in the shortest time possible, there must be a deputy president of the Republic of South Africa.
Yeah, I don't think we're being preemptive. It's just, trying to find out the facts from you.
Yes.
And in terms of the cabinet reshuffle, is that issue likely to be discussed by the top 6?
Well, I'm sure that if the top 6 discusses any other issue that could be a matter of concern, if there is to be a reshuffle.
Is it on the agenda, though?
Well, I wouldn't know. I don't sit in the top 6, so I will be shooting ahead of myself.
Well, 13 suspects who were arrested in connection with the brutal killing of 5 policemen and a retired soldier in Ngobo in the Eastern Cape are expected to appear at the Ngobo Magistrates Court today. A group of assailants gunned down the on-duty lawkeepers at the police station and allegedly blasted an ATM machine. Meanwhile, the leader of the Seven Angels Ministry at Ngobo in the Eastern Cape, Banele Mangobo, says that he is certain that his eldest brother, Tandazile Mangoba, was involved in the shooting of the 5 police officers. On Friday, a shootout between suspects and police ensued, and the 3 Mangoba brothers are among the 7 people that died during the incident at the church compound. To make sense of all these developments coming out of Ngobo, we spoke to SABC reporter Zemke, who first exposed the church and has been following the developments. Let's have a look.
This church was formed in 1986 in KwaZulu-Natal, where the late Mr. Mangoba was the leader of the church at Mzimkhulu. And there were allegations that he sexually abused one of the young congregants, but he later won that case in court. But subsequent to that court case, people of Mzimkhulu chased him away, and then he opened this church here at Ngobo in his ancestral home. Now, he continued to operate until 2015, when he passed on, and his sons, the 7 sons who refer to themselves as the angels, then took over. The rules of the church, even in 1986, were that if you are a member of the church, you are not allowed to go to school. And but at that stage, people who were working, and they would take leave and come and stay at the church for some time. And when the leave has expired, then they will go back to work. But when the sons took over, they said they no longer use the Bible as an instruction of things they need to do at the church. They now communicate directly, spiritually, with their late father, who communicates with God in heaven. So they said the first instruction that the father has given them after taking over is that no one must go out of the gates of the church. It is then that the community of Nyanga tipped the media that the practices of that church were somehow dubious and suspicious. Then we went to expose the matter and the CRL Commission intervened, and the 7 angels were told to discontinue what was happening there. But it continued to operate 2 years later now, Shante. We have suspects that have been found in the premises of the church, and 7 of them were gunned down. And the existing leaders of the church who were not gunned down and who were not arrested on Friday have now handed themselves over for questioning. And today they are expected to be part of the people that will appear before the Ngobo Magistrates Court.
Now, this has definitely opened up a bigger can of worms, as it's not just killings now. What is the link between the Mangoba Seven Angels Ministries and indeed what took place on Wednesday night police killings? Well, the Gauteng provincial government plans to grow the economy, create jobs, as well as fight crime and corruption in 2018. Premier David Makura is expected to announce these issues. Let's cross live to the State of the Province address for Gauteng.
Honor to the Premier, Ntate Jonas Gwangwa. I'm sure he's still on his way to the gallery there. But let me also acknowledge the First Lady of our province, Mrs. Makura, who's also seated there at the gallery. Other dignitaries who are here with us, we have our permanent delegates to the NCOP. All of them are participating in the proceedings today. Let me also acknowledge our former MPLs at the Gauteng Provincial Legislature, the Speaker from the Limpopo Province who is here with us, and today it is her birthday as well. Happy birthday, Madam Speaker. Let me acknowledge all the speakers from the municipalities who are sitting there. Maybe say thank you to the Speaker of the City of Tshwane who was supposed to host us, but unfortunately Honorable Takama is the one that is hosting us today. Let me acknowledge all the mayors present, the mayor of the City of Tshwane, the mayor of Eguruleni, and other mayors who are here that I might not have seen. Members of the diplomatic corps sitting there from Singapore, Kazakhstan, British High Commission, State of Palestine, the USA, the Republic of Kenya, Burkina Faso, Sweden, Libya, Venezuela, Nigeria, China, Japan, Angola, Malawi, and Mozambique. We are all welcome to the official sitting of the legislature. The veterans and freedom stalwarts, the Public Service Commissioner, the Human Rights Commissioner, secretaries of the provincial legislatures, representatives of the SADC countries, faith-based organization, all the guests to the Premier, the Deputy Speaker, all strategic corporate partners, the Secretary of the Gauteng Legislature, all Chapter 9 institutions and all the institutions supporting democracy, reps from the National Prosecuting Authority, the creative industry and sport, women in business, the DGs and HODs from our Gauteng departments, reps from the business sector, organized labor, leaders and guests of political parties, traditional leaders, religious and members of the various faith-based organizations, the youth organization, leaders and academics from all Gauteng institutions of higher learning, NGOs, Vita Basadi winners for 2017, the media and all other guests invited. You are all welcome. Let me therefore suspend the sitting for 3 minutes in order to allow the media to take photos of the chamber in session. Could all the photographers kindly enter the session?
As we await the Premier to take the stand, let's continue with some news in the meantime. Parliament has described comments by the CRL Rights Commission Chair Toko Mkwanazi Kaluva about the events at Ngobo in the Eastern Cape as unfortunate. The Commission said it hoped Parliament would now fast-track the regulation of the religious sector after the killings, allegedly by members of the Man Over Seven Ministry. 7 people, including 3 church leaders, were later shot dead by the police. The Commission had warned that the Man Over Seven Angels Church was a cult and a ticking time bomb. Parliament spokesperson Moloto Motapo says Parliament is appealing for cool heads, Mothapo says the CRL comments and also demonstrates poor understanding of the constitutional mandate of Parliament. The Commission's chair, Toko Mkwanazi spoke to the SABC.
When we met with the church leaders, the 7 angels, they call themselves angels, we did say they are a ticking time bomb. We could tell that how they were running their church was more of a cult than a church. If people are supposed to hand over all their worldly goods, go and stay there and be looked after by the church members, and no one is working, no one is going to school, what then happens when the money runs out? We've been saying over and over, people are going to start dying. We never thought it would be the police. We thought maybe they'll go on a mass suicide kind of thing. We didn't think they'd be this creative. But we've always said something needs to happen there, and there's nothing in the current legislation that allows anybody to stop what was happening there.
So having said that, will this church be investigated?
Well, I think this is not a church. As Minister Mbalula was saying, they need to be shut down now that a crime has happened there.
Well, they call themselves a church.
That's what they call themselves. But when we investigated, we said all the, the parameters and the doctrine and all those basic things that a church should have, they did not show that. All they had was a lot of people living there, waiting to be looked after by the 7 young men who call themselves angels. They think school is satanic. They think the Constitution was made in hell. And they think no one should work. People should just bring their everything and stay there. So you wouldn't say it is a normal church. And we don't have current legislation to deal with such. That's why we've all tried to stop them, but we discovered that we do not have any authority until Parliament passes legislation.
What kind of legislation
We're looking at
a
peer review mechanism. Like lawyers have their law society, every profession has its own enabling legislation that allows for a peer review mechanism.
Give us more detail, if you can, about what kind of rights that have been violated against the congregants of this church and the occupants thereof.
You see, we've always said freedom, basic freedom of movement. The fact that children's rights to education were being violated. What we also discovered was that congregants' rights to health, for instance, they were not allowed to go to clinics if they were unwell. They would be prayed for. So a plethora of rights were being violated there. Constitutional rights.
You mentioned freedom and freedom of movement. I mean, that is one claim that they may use, to advance their agenda. How does the CRL then draw the line between congregants dispensing patronage and loyalty to their religious organization on the one hand, and then being conscious to their rights being violated on the other hand? Where do you strike the balance?
It's a serious struggle in the country, because you find that most people participate willingly in their own oppression in these religious settings, because they believe there's a higher being at play here, there's God involved. And when we're a Christian, and it's the whole issue around the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And when people really believe, they do believe, and then they get exploited. That's why our study we called the commercialization of religion and the abuse of people's beliefs. Because we realized that people were capitalizing on the fact that as Christians, we believe.
Just coming out there, let's go back to the live proceedings where Premier David Makura is going to deliver the State of the Province address for Gauteng.
We should put behind us the era of diminishing trust in public institutions and weakened confidence in leadership. We should put all the negativity that has dogged our country behind us, because a new dawn is upon us. It is a new dawn that is inspired by our collective memory of Nelson Mandela and the changes that are unfolding. As we rid our minds of all negativity, we should reaffirm our belief that South Africa belongs to all who live in it. For though we are a diverse people, we are one nation, close quote. Fellow South Africans, I sincerely believe President Ramaphosa is the kind of leader South Africa needs at this moment, given the nature of the challenges our country faces. Let us all support him across party political affiliation and ideological divide. We in Gauteng are deeply humbled and highly encouraged that much of what the President outlined in his State of the Nation address constitutes the core of our program for radical transformation, modernization, and reindustrialization. Emboldened by the President's call for renewal and change, we shall act with greater determination to increase momentum on the following programs we have been pursuing. Firstly, addressing the problem of youth unemployment through TSEPO 1 million in partnership with the private sector and the youth themselves. Strengthening the partnership with the private sector, labor, and civil society to unlock inclusive growth, greater levels of employment and empowerment, as well as the structural transformation and reindustrialization of our economy. Increasing support for the revitalization of the township economy, harnessing the opportunities provided for by the advent of the fourth industrial revolution, by modernizing key sectors of our economy and the state, speeding up the delivery of new infrastructure and paying attention to the maintenance of existing one across our entire city region, upholding ethical leadership and integrity by intensifying the fight against corruption, collusion, and maladministration in government, working in partnership with civil society, reconnecting with communities throughout our province and unlocking their energies for them to become the primary drivers of this renewal and change that the President spoke about. And lastly, changing the culture of the public service so that we can treat citizens with dignity and serve the people with compassion and professionalism. As a province that played no small role in bringing about this new era of change and renewal, Gauteng Province has a responsibility to conceptually, practically, and programmatically unpack the full meaning of this new dawn. And for us, it cannot be business as usual. We must first acknowledge that we are emerging from a period of pain, adversity, and despair. It has been a difficult and trying time for our citizens, for businesses, and even for those of us who have been afforded the opportunity and responsibility to serve our people in government. Speaking about myself as a father and family man living in this province, I know that life has been tough for parents who have the responsibility to put bread on the table for their families and for raising their children. The price of food, electricity, and transport has been skyrocketing, placing enormous stress on family finances. This has increased the incidences of urban poverty and food insecurity in our province. Our approach to dealing with poverty has to change. It cannot be business as usual in this regard. It is also necessary to say that we must look for VAT zero rating of more foodstuffs and basic necessities if we are to ensure that our people are cushioned from these high food prices, electricity prices, and transport costs. Despite the fact that our economy has created a massive 300,000 jobs between 2014 and 2016, and another 400,000 jobs between 2010 and 2014, we must acknowledge that momentum has slowed down in our growth trajectory, owing largely to the tough economic conditions, especially in the aftermath of the downgrade of our country in 2017. There are clear signs already that a new dawn is upon us, thus instilling this renewed confidence in our country's economy. All key players in the economy, including labor, business, and consumers, are willing to work together under the leadership of President Ramaphosa to get South Africa working so that our economy can work for all our people. This new dawn should usher in the total renewal of the public service and fundamental change in the way citizens experience governance, including strengthening accountability and integrity of public officials and public servants, so that we can avoid fatal disasters such as the Life Esidimeni tragedy. The new dawn is about drawing inspiration from the life of Nelson Mandela, who had an amazing ability to turn adversity into opportunity, war into peace, enemies into friends, despair into hope, tragedy into a force for positive change. In his book, A Time for New Dreams, Ben Okri, the distinguished African scholar and writer, says the following about learning from adversity and difficult times. I quote, "The need reminds us that great civilizations can be built on great failures. It also reminds us that adversity is not the end of the story, but where there's courage and vision, the beginning of a new one, a greater one than before. Difficult times do one of two things to us. They either break us or they force us to go back to the primal ground of our very being. Adversity wakes us up. It reminds us not of who we think we are in our vanity, but of who we are in our simplicity. It is in difficult times that the great times ahead are dreamt and built, brick by brick, with maturity and the hope that comes from wise action." Close quote. The new dawn must therefore inspire us to recoil from despair and wake up from the nightmare of a bleak future so that we can rebuild the South Africa of our dreams. We had stopped from dreaming as a people, from dreaming about a better future, due to living through a nightmare of seeing parts of our democratic state being captured in broad daylight in pursuit of greed and rabid private interest. The new dawn must therefore inspire us, in the words of Professor Khositsile, our national poet laureate, to rehabilitate our wounded dreams and reclaim and nourish the song of the quality of our vibrant being. The new dawn must also inspire young people of our province to dream big and aspire to live in a province, a country, and the world where there's greater equality, economic freedom, prosperity for all, and social and environmental justice. The youth must follow the wise counsel of President Nelson Mandela that education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. They should know that there's no shortcut to self-development and self-empowerment. We must say to our youth that education is an act of love from us as a nation, as their parents. Through education, young people will be empowered to play a meaningful role in society and pursue their dreams regardless of the circumstances of their birth. As part of preparing our children for a better future, our province has achieved 95% universal access to Grade R. Providing all children with early childhood development opportunities is part of the South African dream espoused in our National Development Plan. With regard to basic education, Gauteng runs the second largest public education system after KwaZulu-Natal, with enrollment having grown from 1.3 million in 1994 to 2.3 million in 2018. Gauteng has also consistently been amongst the best performing provinces on basic education. Our throughput rate is above 70%, which means out of every 10 learners who start grade 12, 7 of them complete as required. In the 2017 grade 12 results, Gauteng came second after the Free State, while 7 of our districts were in the top 10 nationally. The most significant improvement in our basic education system is evident in the turnaround of township schools and the overall performance of learners from townships, especially in the gateway subjects such as mathematics, science, technology, economics, and accounting. Madam Speaker, Gauteng is the only province that offers all 11 official languages and 7 international languages. This is consistent with the cosmopolitan and diverse character of our province, which we embrace with both hands. Gauteng is truly the home for all. As part of preparing our children for the future, in particular for the digital industrial revolution, our province is the leader in the deployment of digital technology for learning and teaching. The deployment of digital technology has significantly raised the level of interest and has improved digital skills among learners in our public education system. In 2017, our province was also awarded a gold prize for artisan skills development by the National Skills Authority, with KwaZulu-Natal in second place coming after us. This was in recognition of the effort we are putting in vocational training, which responds to the needs of our economy. Our schools of specialization represent a major intervention. Over the past 5 years, the Gauteng government has spent more than 1 billion rands on bursaries, which have benefited more than 20,000 graduates. We will continue to invest more resources in the training and development of young people in our province, because this is a province of dreamers. We welcome the introduction of free higher education for students from working class and poor family backgrounds. This is truly the dawn of a new era for many parents and young people who have been denied access to higher education for many years simply on the basis of the circumstances of their birth. Several generations of students, many of whom are here, fought pitched battles in pursuit of this dream of fee-free, further and higher education. Now the ball is in the court of our students themselves, who must work hard to complete.
Well, just taking you there out of SOPA GP 2018, Premier David Makura highlighting the success of the results across the board in Johannesburg as well as the Gauteng province on education. Let's take a short break. When we come back, all your top stories.
Making it out of the friend zone. Being complimented on your weave when you're not wearing one. When your washing machine gives you all your socks back.
With so many good deals at the Tops at Spa Subfest, you'll find any reason to celebrate. Buy a case of Castle Lager Handies for only $189.99. Only at the Tops at Spa Subfest.
Airstrikes in eastern Syria have killed at least 25 civilians. The United Nations Special Representative in the Democratic Republic of Congo has called for restraint after 2 people were killed during protests. Thousands of demonstrators took to the streets of Brussels in solidarity with migrants and to protest against the Belgian government migration policy. Airstrikes in eastern Syria have killed at least 25 civilians, including 7 children on the last pocket of the Islamic State jihadists. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights says the strikes were conducted yesterday around the village of Al-Shafa near the border with Iraq. Well, after days of diplomatic wrangling, the United Nations Security Council on Saturday adopted a resolution calling for a 30-day ceasefire in Syria without delay to allow for aid deliveries and medical evacuations. The resolution raised hopes of stemming the bloodshed, but after clashes continued on Sunday, it was unclear when or how broadly the ceasefire would be implemented. Russia is a key ally of Assad's regime. In a phone call on Sunday, German Chancellor Angela Merkel and French President Emmanuel Macron urged President Vladimir Putin to use his influence to reach a truce. They called on Russia to exercise maximum pressure on the Syrian regime to achieve an immediate suspension of air raids and fighting. Nigeria's Information Minister Lai Mohammed says police and security officials have been sent to schools in Yobe State to deter attacks by insurgents. After meeting parents, Mohammed promised to find the 110 girls missing since the Boko Haram militants attacked their school in Dapachi a week ago.
Some of the attackers were camouflaged, with witnesses stating that a number of students thought they were soldiers. There had been confusion over the number of those missing, with estimates ranging from about 50 to more than 100. State police, Yobe government and others had given different figures, while a parent representing families of girls who disappeared says 105 are missing. Information Minister Lai Mohammed says police and security officials have been deployed to schools in the state.
Henceforth, the police and the Civil Defense Corps will ensure that their presence are strong in every school so that they will serve as deterrents to insurgents. Secondly, the security agencies, the outfits, are working together and they are synergizing to ensure that these girls are recovered as fast as possible. They're already working on several very important leads, which would be, I think it would be very, it would be very imprudent to talk about. But we want to assure Nigerians that no stone will be left unturned in our determination to rescue these girls.
Boko Haram attained international notoriety after abducting more than 270 schoolgirls from the town of Chibok. That case drew global attention to the insurgency and spawned high-profile social media campaign, #BringBackOurGirls. President Muhammadu Buhari, who was elected in 2015 after vowing to crush Boko Haram, has described the disappearance of the girls after Monday's attack as a national disaster.
Well, the United Nations Special Representative in the Democratic Republic of Congo has called for restraint after 2 people were killed during protests against President Joseph Kabila. Roman Catholics in many parts of Congo attempted to demonstrate after Sunday Mass, despite a ban on protests and churches being surrounded by security forces. The Catholic Church has become the most vocal opponent of President Kabila, whose term in office expired in 2016.
Footage released by Union for the Congolese Nation opposition party showed protesters being dispersed by police as they marched from St. Pius Church in Kinshasa's Giringiri neighborhood. The head of the UNC, Vital Kamerhe, was at the church. Catholic and evangelical churchgoers across Congo had been meant to take to the streets following Sunday services. However, armed security forces surrounded Kinshasa's main churches and blocked roads, preventing most demonstrators from getting started and in some cases using tear gas and gunfire to disperse them. Witnesses who brought the body of the slain man to Kinshasa's St. Joseph Hospital said he had been shot by police outside a church in the Lemba neighborhood. Joseph Kabila has been in power since 2001.
Well, the head of the United Nations humanitarian efforts in Somalia, Peter de Klerk, has stressed the importance of enhancing communities' resilience in dealing with the effects of recurring droughts and famine. Well, during his tour of Puntland, de Klerk met with Puntland President Abdi Weli Al-Khas.
The United Nations humanitarian coordinator for Somalia, Peter de Klerk, arrived in Puntland's capital, Garowe, and commended the drought relief and recovery efforts of the authorities in the northern state of Puntland, while cautioning that the current humanitarian crisis was far from over.
Today we specifically discussed the issue of the drought, which we expect may be imminent, and how we can mitigate the effect of that drought. How we can help the people who have been displaced in the previous droughts and other issues.
De Klerk said while 2017 was a good year in terms of a close cooperation to avoid worst impact of the drought, further effort will be needed.
We're seeing a lot of displacement. We're seeing the cities and towns in Somaliland growing, and more destitute people who have lost their livestock and lost their livelihoods coming to the cities in expectation of some support and some assistance. And as unfortunately the historical trend is, we will see many of these people not going back.
He highlighted that both emergency relief and longer-term resilience-building efforts complemented each other with a view to breaking the cycle of drought and famine.
Yes, we're going to have a drought. Yes, things are getting very bad, but we want this cycle to stop. We don't want to have every few years to launch another relief operation with humanitarian effort. We need to make sure that the country does grow its own food, it produces its own wealth so that people no longer have to rely on outside handouts.
De Klerk was visiting Puntland to meet with security planning and humanitarian officials from the local government, as well as representatives of civil society organizations, to discuss the current drought response and other challenges in the region. He also visited Hargeisa, the capital of Somaliland, where he met with various high-level officials and civil society representatives.
Thousands of demonstrators took to the streets of Brussels in solidarity with migrants and to protest against the Belgian government's migration policy. Some protesters held placards saying solidarity with refugees should not be criminalized and demanding Asylum and Migration State Secretary Theo Franken's departure from government.
Protesters rallied at the Maximilian Park, where many migrants seeking refugee status have been camping out since 2015 because of its proximity to the country's immigration department, which examines asylum requests.
Today we see a government that is proposing a law that will allow house searches. They are talking about house visits, but those are in fact police searches, which do not criminalize solidarity. But they target families who will have to cope with these searches, with the violence of these searches.
I think that they do not take into account the misery of people. The fact that there are not so many migrants, that the number of the ones already here represents just a small group compared with the entirety of migrants, that we can welcome some when there is no future for people in their country, when they escape from war and misery, that's normal. I would also escape if I were in these conditions. I would pay smugglers hoping there's a better future elsewhere.
A member of the Flemish right-wing party, Franken last year, made headlines by refusing humanitarian visas to a family of Syrian refugees from besieged Aleppo.
Well, Black Panther scored one of the best second weekends ever with an estimated $108 million in ticket sales, putting it on track to rank among the highest grossing blockbusters ever.
The world is changing.
Black Panther has another smashing weekend at the box office, earning $108 million, placing it high above its competition. The reviews have been stellar after years of criticism about the underrepresentation of people of color in Hollywood. And with its North American box office success story, the filmmakers say they hope it will encourage studios to invest in more racially diverse films.
Tonight, we're taking game night up a notch.
Warner Brothers' Game Night could not compete on the same level, even though the characters themselves were out to win. Starring Jason Bateman and Rachel McAdams, the film turns your typical game night into a real-life murder mystery.
Baby, hand me those matches.
It slides into second place this weekend with $16.6 million in North American ticket sales.
Oh my God, I shot you!
Good old Peter Rabbit has hopped into third place with $12.5 million.
Face was so classic!
Though the animals drive Mr. McGregor crazy, Peter and his three sisters, Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail, seem to be entertaining theater-going families with their wit and resourcefulness.
Well, Samsung Electronics grabbed center stage in Barcelona at the Mobile World Congress with the unveiling of its latest flagship handset, the Galaxy S9. The South Korean technology giant is banking on new features such as augmented reality-based emojis, camera upgrades, and stereo speakers. Samsung's president of IT Mobile communications DJ Co says that this Galaxy S9 has been designed for the visual and social generation. The phone features improved cameras, an artificial intelligence power voice tool, and social media functions that are easier to deploy than previous offerings. While Samsung is challenging the iPhone X's Animoji feature with its own take on the phenomenon, the company isn't fighting Apple's new design. The new Samsung phones, which come in the same 5.8-inch and 6.2-inch screen sizes, look similar to last year's phones, save for slightly slimmer bezels on top and the bottom. Let's take a short break here on SABC Newsroom. When we come back, Marumo Kakana with your sports.
So the issue of waves is that don't underestimate yourself. You are exactly the cornerstone of the solutions we are looking for.
To go and intervene and make sure that people respect the Constitution.
Now, if drug dealers are paying political leaders, then you will never get rid of that problem.
We need to see detail that we will not see further bailouts.
Fidel, a towering figure of the 20th century.
Stay tuned to PM News for all your news updates every Saturday and Sunday from 1500 hours.
Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. Let's update your sports news. Orlando Pirates are the new chasers-in-chief in the ABSA Premiership after closing within 4 points of local leaders Mamelodi Sundowns. The Buccaneers produced a powerful attack to win 4-2 against Chipa United on Sunday. A third win from their last 4 league games to send a warning ahead of next weekend's Soweto Derby.
This from Mayambela as he ran it too far wide. Shot, oh, and a goal! Machupo on the turn.
Did Marco intentionally drop his hand to make us to stop the ball?
Not in my opinion. Up against him, Congo, and he just beats him. Marco's in there. This might be a chance for Shonga. They still haven't cleared. Mimela with some clever footwork. Shonga! That's a magnificent goal from the Buccaneers. And Ninzo, ball through the middle here. Shots for Rakhale, and it's snuck in from Mashego, his first touch of the game. Maela, another fine ball, goal, launch. Pirates are back in the lead. Lumbo, turn for Shonga. Shonga drives, magnificent! Justin Shonga!
And staying with domestic football, Golden Arrows brought an end to their winless streak in the ABSA Premiership with a hard-fought goal-to-nil win over fellow relegation contenders AX of Cape Town at the Princess Makoko Stadium in KwaMashu. Victory moves Abafanabes 5 points clear of their rivals, who next face SuperSport United in a midweek clash.
Ajax wanted to win so they can move away from the bottom of the table. Golden Arrows, on the other hand, were looking for their first win in 5 league outings since January. Danny Venter was denied by keeper Brandon Peterson on this occasion. Venter was a thorn in Ajax defense on the right flank, with the home side awarded a penalty after Ronald Lamula was fouled in the box.
Oh, that's just a missed opportunity. Was it a referee penalty?
Limbigani Mzava stepped up, beating Peterson from the penalty spot to put Arrows in the lead. Ajax launched this attack late in the first half, with Arrows' defense dealing well with the danger. While the Urban Warriors gave an improved performance in the second half, it was Arrows that twice came close to scoring a goal. However, they were let down by wayward shooting on both occasions. In the end, Mzava's first half goal earned Arrows their first win since January. Pesinka, SABC News.
Manchester United hit back to stun Chelsea in their Premier League at Old Trafford. Romelu Lukaku came up with a goal and an assist as Jose Mourinho claimed the bragging rights over rival Antonio Conte. Here is how it unfolded.
Willian. Hazard. Back to Willian, it's a super ball. And it's a tremendous finish. Christensen's taken a whack in the face there. Sanchez and Lukaku! 1-1! Lingard! Off the bench, onto the score sheet.
English golfer Eddie Pepperell has won his first tournament on the European Tour after taking honours at the Qatar Masters in Doha. He finished on 18 under for the tournament, one shot ahead of compatriot Oliver Fisher.
Well done, Eddie Pepperell. Oh, the relief. You could see just how nervous he was throughout this final round. He's ridden his luck a couple of times, but doesn't every winner. But in the end, these two great friends battle it out, and it's Pepperell who comes out on top. He's the champion here in Qatar.
Yeah, congratulations. How heavy? Yeah, it's heavy.
Trophy handed over by Hassan Al-Naimi, the president of the Qatar Golf Association, and Joseph Abraham, the group chief executive of Commercial Bank. He's a strong boy. He needs to be. It's a beautiful trophy. It really is. And this was the short putt, which made Eddie Pepperell a winner.
What's it like, Tony? You've won it.
Oh, man. It's a heavy trophy, but the adrenaline, it feels like a feather.
And that brings us to the end of your second installment of Newsroom Sport. Stay with us. Up next is your continental weather forecast.
We take an in-depth look of all your stories of the day across the world. Stay tuned to Primetime News every day from 18 hours.
South Africa is in need of a frank dialogue. My name is Onkgopote JJ Tabane. Join me every Sunday at 8:30 on SABC News Channel 404 as we speak to leaders of society, business and government about the state of our nation. Come now, let's talk frankly.
Did you know the big hole digging started in 1871 and ended on the 14th August 1914? The hole produced 2,722 kgs of diamonds. However, one diamond as huge as 490 carat of stone found in the open prior 1868 gave them the interest to dig. Extracted from 22.5 million tons of soil. Today, the hole sits at a breathtaking 214 meters deep. Kimberley Big Hole attracts tourists from all over the world, taking a vintage tram past the city, then cycling around the Big Hole.
The theme last year was imagining ourselves into existence, which is, you know, interesting in the fact that this is something that you imagined would happen and it came into existence.
Last year we ended up with 56 writers, and then we were like, guys, we need to keep it at 40 at least because this is too much to handle. We have 63 this year. It's becoming impossible to keep it down because every single person wants to be here. Writers who were here last year, they want to be here, but it's about rotation and balance. So this year, in terms of the lineup, we retained a few people that we're hoping are carrying the energy from last year. You know, they're carrying the values that developed from last year. People like Lebu Mashile, who is the face of the festival, and people like Pumla Dinewo Gola, Zuki Savaner, new people. It's new people that you wouldn't ordinarily find in a literary festival. I'm talking here about someone like Zanele Ndlovu, who comes from here in Soweto, and Zanele plays traditional instruments in her storytelling. The kind of thing that Gcinamhlope does, the kind of thing that Madosini does, right? And here is young Zanele, and she takes her craft so seriously, and it is so beautiful. And then obviously it's about balance, so you need the big names again. So we are celebrating people like Titi Tagaremba, who's doing the keynote address. We've got Sisonke Msimang, who's coming all the way from Australia to be here. Zake Simda. When we didn't have Zake Simda last year, people were like, what happened? But it's important to reserve certain people so that it's interesting next time as well. When I think back to these days, like a week before the festival, the bars, I knew that I created something, but now it was just having a life of its own. I was not entirely responsible for the spirit that was coming out, the love, the happiness that people were deriving and bringing into this thing, right? And one of the things was the focus on Black women, right? We had a session where we had, you know, people like Pumla Dinero and Kosi Kaba and Barbara Boswell, who had done scholarship, had produced scholarship on people like Miriam Klari, people like Loretta Ngobo, reflecting on this. So it was a celebration of black women. People were so happy to come to the festival, and for the first time, instead of finding African literature in some small corner hidden somewhere, it was everything that was there was African literature. And it was not just 3 books, it was 50. So people were saying that they were happy that they could find books they've been searching for, and now they didn't have to look for them. They were there, right? Yeah. They were brought for them.
Top 6 to meet following an NEC meeting yesterday, but still no clear indication who the next deputy president will be. 13 suspects arrested in connection with the 5 brutal killings of those police officers and a retired soldier in the Eastern Cape are expected to appear in court this morning. Police and traffic officials are monitoring the N2 highway heading to the Cape Town at the airport approach following an early morning protest in Gugulethu.
And of course, from the sports desk, Orlando Pirates are the new chasers-in-chief in the Absa Premiership after closing within 4 points of local leaders Mamelodi Sundowns.
That is magnificent! Justin Shonga from the tightest of angles. 4 goals this afternoon.
Well, hello and welcome to Newsroom. I'm Shante Yankees coming to you live from our Auckland Park studios in Johannesburg. A lot coming up between now and 12 p.m, including the latest on the case of the police killings in Eastern Cape. We have views on the top stories as well as news from the continent. Of course, I'm not alone. Standing by with your sports is Marumo Gagana. Very good morning to you, Marumo. Sporting-wise, and the highlights, what are you expecting?
Over this past weekend, the Winter Olympics were coming to an end in Pyeongchang. You know that we only had 1 representative as a country, yeah. And of course, Nigeria at least had 2 athletes representing them. I'm talking about that Olympic Games, the Winter Olympic Games that were held in Pyeongchang. And also, we'll give you an update on all the action that took place over the weekend, football-wise, locally and internationally. This and more later on during the Sports Bulletin.
Thank you very much, Marumo. Well, the ANC's top 6 will meet today following the conclusion of the party's decision-making body's special meeting yesterday in Pretoria. It was speculated that there could be a decision about a cabinet deployment, among other points of deliberation. SABC's Morning Live sat down with Pulemabe, the ANC's national spokesperson, who wouldn't confirm or deny the rumour that Naledi Pandor could be the next South African deputy president.
Matters of prerogative on who gets to be appointed as whether it's deputy president, whether it's in cabinet and all of that, those are really one which is exercised by the president. Of course, because the ANC is a strategic center of power, there is an engagement between officials on a number of things, because in whatever gets to be done, the unity of the ANC must always reign supreme,
yeah,
which is very important.
It is. So was it discussed the past weekend at the NEC meeting?
Once the National Executive Committee of the ANC finds itself discussing cabinet deployments and all of that, you can just imagine. Individual cadres will then start nominating themselves there. What will that do? It will create.
But how far is the process in Ndatimabi? Are we likely to see the outcome of that particular issue today after the top 6 meeting?
No, I take it that the top 6 meet from time to time to attend to organizational matters.
This is their first meeting today.
What I can assure you of, no, they've always been meeting. What I can assure you of is that for as soon as there is a decision and one that requires to be communicated to the public, I'm sure the president of the country will be the first one to do so, because once he has appointed the deputy president or whatever restructuring that would have happened at that level, he will convey those to the public. I don't think that we should really be preemptive on what needs to happen. What we can be assured of is that in the shortest time possible, there must be a deputy president of the Republic of South Africa.
Yeah, I don't think we're being preemptive. We're just, trying to find out the facts from you.
Yes.
And in terms of the cabinet reshuffle, is that issue likely to be discussed by the top six?
Well, I'm sure that if the top six discusses any other issue that could be a matter of concern, if there is to be a reshuffle.
Is it on the agenda, though?
Well, I wouldn't know. I don't sit in the top six, so I will be shooting ahead of myself.
Well, the Gauteng government plans to grow the economy, create jobs, as well as fight crime, poverty and corruption in 2018. Well, Premier David Makhura outlined how the province is going to take advantage of the renewed hope and optimism instilled during the State of the Nation address by President Cyril Ramaphosa last week.
Gauteng province has a responsibility to conceptually, practically and programmatically unpack the full meaning of this new dawn. And for us, it cannot be business as usual. We must first acknowledge that we are emerging from a period of pain, adversity, and despair. It has been a difficult and trying time for our citizens, for businesses, and even for those of us who have been afforded the opportunity and responsibility to serve our people in government. Speaking about myself as a father and family man living in this province, I know that life has been tough for parents who have the responsibility to put bread on the table for their families and for raising their children. The price of food, electricity, and transport has been skyrocketing, placing enormous stress on family finances. This has increased the incidences of urban poverty and food insecurity in our province. Our approach to dealing with poverty has to change. It cannot be business as usual in this regard. It is also necessary to say that we must look for VAT zero rating of more foodstuffs and basic necessities if we are to ensure that our people are cushioned from these high food prices, electricity prices, and transport costs. Despite the fact that our economy has created a massive 300,000 jobs between 2014 and 2016, and another 400,000 jobs between 2010 and 2014. We must acknowledge that momentum has slowed down in our growth trajectory, owing largely to the tough economic conditions, especially in the aftermath of the downgrade of our country in 2017. There are clear signs already that a new dawn is upon us, thus instilling this renewed confidence in our country's economy. All key players in the economy, including labor, business, and consumers, are willing to work together under the leadership of President Ramaphosa.
The election of President Cyril Ramaphosa as the ANC leader has led to opposition grumbling for strategies to win voters come 2019 elections. Well, if the previous elections were anything to go by, pundits say the 2019 poll will beat it hands down. The ANC is oozing confidence and the opposition is panicking. Ramaphosa will be the face of the party, but the coming of the by-election will be used as a test of support based on the different parties. Aldrin Samper has a look at the shift of balance.
I want to lend a hand. Send me.
Since Cyril Ramaphosa's ascension, the political mood has shifted. This is even evident from the tone of the opposition.
We all stood up to applaud the president after his State of the Nation address. And I'll be honest with you, it felt good.
We are willing to give you a chance as a president of the Republic of South Africa, as head of state and government.
This has trickled down to the electorate, like in Soweto's Ward 14, which has a by-election on Wednesday.
I'm extremely excited. There's a great weight off my shoulders.
I mean, there's anticipation of positive change. I hope we're going to change.
Riding the wave of optimism is the ANC's Joburg region. It claims a surge in popularity following Ramaphosa's election.
According to the mood that we have assessed on the ground, if we were to go for local government elections next week, we were going to win back the city of Johannesburg.
The opposition appears unfazed, at least on camera, but observers say they will have to change tact.
Obviously, it will require a way of changing things because we were, predominantly characterized by discussing an individual who, because of corruption was the main thing which dominated politics of this country.
So Ramaphosa is never in the manifesto of the EFF. Jacob Zuma is not in the manifesto of the EFF. The EFF's founding manifesto outlined clearly a program of action that is meant to uplift the people's life.
We are not concerned by who leads the ANC. What concerns us are the needs of our communities, which must be met.
With Zuma out and Ramaphosa in, what does this mean for opposition parties on the campaign trail?
The danger for the opposition, if they are not careful, they might end up being pressure groups rather than opposition, because the pressure group, it focuses on a specific issue and it seeks to change that. So, for example, the EFF, for example, is concerned about land. So they might find themselves pressurizing the ANC to deliver on the land expropriation without compensation, without necessarily presenting themselves as an alternative government.
There's another dynamic. The SACP seems to be backtracking on its go-it-alone option at the ballot box.
Yes, we contested elections in Metsimaholo as a special dispensation. So we're not necessarily saying that even by-elections that are going to occur all over the country will be contesting.
With the ANC's conference resolutions, change of the guard and consolidation of its support, the opposition will have to rethink its strategy as individual parties and as a coalition. Aldrin Simpier, SABC News, Johannesburg.
The Independent Electoral Commission, IEC, is scheduled to testify this morning in Durban before the Murani Commission investigating political killings in KZN. Well, the IEC is expected to shed light on the forced by-elections where, as a ward councillor had been killed. Evidence before the Murani Commission has been that some people were seeing councillors as a means to gain income and would want to stay in the positions at all cost. Councillors and municipal officials were amongst the victims who had been gunned down in the province. The commission is expected to wrap up at the end of March. The protests continue in Gugulethu near Cape Town after angry backyard dwellers reportedly trying to take over land in the area last week. A car was set alight in front of the popular Mzoli's restaurant on Sunday in ongoing service delivery protests. A supermarket next door to Mzoli's was also looted. This morning, the N2 was again temporarily closed due to protest action. Police and traffic officials are monitoring the situation. 13 suspects who were arrested in connection with the brutal killing of 5 policemen and a retired soldier in Ngobo in the Eastern Cape are appearing at the Ngobo Magistrates Court today. A group of assailants gunned down the on-duty lawkeepers at the police station and allegedly blasted an ATM machine. On Friday, a shootout between suspects and police ensued, and 3 Mangoba brothers were among the 7 people that died during the incident at the church compound. To make sense of the developments coming out of Ngobo, earlier I spoke to SABC reporter Zemke, who first exposed the church and has been following the developments since.
This church was formed in 1986 in KwaZulu-Natal, where the late Mr. Mangoba was the leader of the church at Mzimkhulu. And there were allegations that he sexually abused one of the young congregants, but he later won that case in court. But subsequent to that court case, people of Zemke chased him away, and then he opened this church here at Ngobo in his ancestral home. Now, he continued to operate until 2015 when he passed on, and his sons, the 7 sons who refer to themselves as the angels, then took over. The rules of the church, even in 1986, were that if you are a member of the church, you are not allowed to go to school. And but at that stage, people who were working and they would take leave and come and stay at the church for some time. And when the leave has expired, then they will go back to work. But when the sons took over, they said they no longer use the Bible as an instruction of things they need to do at the church. They now communicate directly, spiritually with their late father, who communicates with God in heaven. So they said the first instruction that the father has given them after taking over is that no one must go out of the gates of the church. It is then that the community of Nyanga tipped the media that the practices of that church were somehow dubious and suspicious. Then we went to expose the matter and the CRL Commission intervened, and the 7 angels were told to discontinue what was happening there. But it continued to operate 2 years later now, Shante. We have suspects that have been found in the premises of the church, and 7 of them were gunned down. And the existing leaders of the church who were not gunned down and who were not arrested on Friday have now handed themselves over for questioning. And today they are expected to be part of the people that will appear before the Ngobo Magistrates Court.
Now, this has definitely opened up a bigger can of worms, as it's not just killings now. What is the link between the Man Over Seven Ministries and indeed what took place on Wednesday night police killings?
The brother that we spoke to yesterday, Banele Mangoba, has confirmed that his late brother, who was shot in that 30 minutes gun battle between police and the alleged criminals, is the person who could have been the mastermind behind the killing of those 5 suspects. But now, Shante, you must remember that he was just telling us as the media, we don't know the statement that he made to the police, whether it is the same statement that he told us as the media, because he gave us that interview before he actually went to hand himself over. The link could be that the firearms were found in the premises of the church, and all of the firearms that were taken during the attack were found there, and the police only went to the church because there was a tip-off. So I think that's proof enough that there is some kind of link between the incident. And also another thing that I think links the church to the incident is that those 2 police officers who were hijacked in their police vehicle in town after that attack on the ATM in town, who were later killed and their bodies dumped next to Nyanga Senior Secondary School. And Nyanga Senior Secondary School and the church are just a street apart. So the bodies were a couple of meters away from the church premises. I think those are some of the things that police used to be able to follow their leads, that led to the arrest of 10 people, which is now 13 people, after these 3 other leaders of the church handed themselves over to the police.
Well, the Northwest Legislature's Portfolio Committee on Health and Social Development, together with the Standing Committee on Public Accounts, have recommended that the Directorate for Priority Crime Investigation Unit, the Hawks, undertake forensic investigations also into the controversial procurement practices in the department. In particular, allegations that the head of the department, Dr. Thabo Lekalakala, and his friends and their spouses' trip to India was paid for by the Gupta-linked company Mediosa. He also allegedly gave Mediosa an upfront payment of 30 million rand before they could start any work for the department. Buthelezi and Emergency Ambulance Services have also raised eyebrows about how they were procured.
The province's oversight committees in the legislature want HOD Dr. Lekalakala suspended. This for the trip to India allegedly paid for by Mediosa and the controversial procurement of Buthelezi Emergency and Ambulance Services. Workers' Union Nehau was critical of the department.
There's a lot of corruption going on within the Department of Health. Now, both the ambulances, we don't agree with them because we complained about the conditions of the departmental ambulances in advance. In place of them, for replacing those ambulances, then they went to take the Buthelezi. That was rejected by Free State Nehau and Kosadu. Now they brought them to Northwest. Now West, they also now included the Midiosa. So this is a serious problem. The government ambulances are just resting underneath the trees, not cared for.
It emerged during public hearings that 168 million rand, a conditional grant meant for ARVs, was diverted to Buthelezi services. Buthelezi distributed 72 private ambulances across the province. Despite criticism, health authorities have defended their decision.
The reason why we were using outsourced services for about 3 or 4 years, we have not been replacing staff in EMRS. We have lost patients who are skilled in EMRS, who have ECT, advanced training. So we were short of that skills. That's why we wanted a service provider that can assist us.
But this reasoning did not convince the committee. It argued that Buthelezi did not make a difference.
Buthelezi is incompetent. Buthelezi is not assisting the process. It has not even made an intervention in terms of your skills gap that you have identified as a department.
It was the procurement of Midiosa which got the committee members hot under the collar. Midiosa's alleged state-of-the-art mobile medical units provides medical services to rural villages identified by the province. The Gupta-linked company was paid 30 million rand upfront to provide mobile clinics. A further 180 million rand was set aside for the company. The department could not produce a contract with the company nor the duration of its services.
What process was followed by the Department of Health in the procurement of Midiosa Mobile Health, the whole health facility, the process of it? What was the role of the MEC in this? What was the role of the Premier in this?
Why didn't you build a hospital instead of this state-of-the-art thing that you're talking about?
Which law did you use to process a payment in advance of 30 million?
HOD Dr. Lekalakala dodged most of the questions.
Part of our package for rural areas and farming areas is to do an integrated healthcare service, mobile health services, so that we can be able to deal with that. And in that sphere, we then benchmarked with the Free State.
The trip to India, paid for by Midiosa, was approved by both the MEC and the Premier.
In the understanding of the integrated primary healthcare mobile unit, that they were going to see it in India, I signed.
It also emerged that the Midiosa mobile clinics were falling short of achieving their mandate. They are not as well equipped as the department indicated.
Money that is spent, we think, is too much, and it could have been channeled to other sources. For example, fixing the existing mobile and increasing them. And the other thing is that does this current Midiosa mobile services, does it reach all rural areas? The answer is no.
The EFF lashed out at the health MEC, Dr. Mahome Masike.
At the end of the day, MEC, you are seen to be useless. Yes. Because you are the head of the department. Things are happening under your watch, and you are not saying anything about them. You are unable to account for everything that is happening in your department.
Just hours before the hearings, the Premier announced forensic investigations into procurement irregularities in the department. But committees want the hawks to investigate the alleged fraud and corruption. Olebogeng Khosilenzwe, SABC News, Mahikeng.
Well, the PAC wants Kimberley Hospital in the Northern Cape to be renamed after its founding father, Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe, as part of commemorating 40 years of his death.
The 27th of February marks 40 years since Sobukwe died at the Kimberley Hospital in 1978 due to collapsed lungs after battling with lung cancer. According to Robert Sobukwe's biography in South African History Online and in various literature, he founded the PAC in 1958 after breaking away from the ANC. Sobukwe was jailed for 3 years by the apartheid government for incitement after he organized the march against past laws in Sharpeville on the 21st of March 1960, now known as the Human Rights Day. The PAC leader, Lutando Mbinda, says one of the injustices committed against Sobukwe was that no audio of his voice can be traced. Mbinda says the PAC still believes there should be recordings of his voice hidden somewhere.
An exciting opportunity and an absolute must for those with the spirit of adventure is a Kruger Park night game drive.
The railway station itself is already a sight to behold and offers gracious colonial-style buildings and serves as the departure and arrival point for all train journeys.
I wanted to dress with my best color. Being awarded to do the Serpentine Pavilion is the highest commission in my career. And I wanted just to come and show me with my best clothes, and that is blue.
Catch Trends Travel every Sunday from 12 to 1 for all the global travel and leisure trends.
Welcome back to SABC's Newsroom. While the CRL Rights Commission says that there are many more religious leaders running institutes like the Man Over Seven Ministry in the Eastern Cape, where police were killed, 7 suspects allegedly linked to the killing of those 5 policemen and a retired soldier. So today, on our question of the day that we have been asking, what do you make of the developments around the Man Over Seven Ministries Church in Ngobo? Continue to send us your comments on at SABC Newsroom. Let's have a look at some of the tweets that have already come through on that. This one coming in from Rosina saying, "Angels of Satan, people wake up. The churches are here to make money using the word of God in a satanic way." Eugene says that church must close because it really shows that it is heaven for criminals. Cases says, well, how sure are they that they killed the right people there? As for the church, it must be stopped. Definitely. Let's have a look at our poll question of the day. We're asking, should government actually regulate the religious sector more vigorously? And where does it start and where does it begin, or end rather? With just over 150 votes coming in, 88% of you are saying yes, 12% of you are still saying no. Let's have a look at some of the tweets behind those numbers there this morning. We'll have a look at those as soon as they come in. Let's have a look now. The SACP is set to be doing a live press briefing this morning in Kempton Park. This is with regards to some of the recent political events that have been surrounding President Jacob Zuma. Let's have a look.
As we normally do, the SACP 14th Congress Central Committee held its 3rd plenary session on the 23rd and 24th of February in Ehuruleni. The meeting occurred against the immediate backdrop of significant, rapid developments in our country, notably the forced resignation of President Zuma on the 12th of February in the face of an imminent parliamentary vote of no confidence, and the election of Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa as President of the Republic 3 days later. Notwithstanding the rapidity of these and many other related developments, the orderly manner in which they have unfolded are a testament both to the strength of our post-apartheid constitutional order as well as the determined wave of popular and patriotic isolation of those involved in the corporate capture and looting of strategic state institutions. The Central Committee noted the important role the SACP has played over an extended period, initially as the only organized formation within the ANC alliance, in identifying and naming state capture, and in demanding the ANC recall of President Zuma. It was the SACP that first called for a judicial commission of inquiry into state capture. In May last year, the SACP convened a national imbizo that drew together participants from, amongst others, COSATU, SANCO, ANC stalwarts and veterans, Business Leadership South Africa, Save South Africa, and various community and faith-based organizations. The National Imbizo adopted a minimum platform of action. The Central Committee noted that without exception, all of the issues highlighted in this platform, that is our Imbizo, have now been undertaken. They include the appointment of an independent judicial commission, the dissolution of the ESCOM board, and the reversal of the irregular reappointment of ESCOM CEO, moves to end the factional abuse of the criminal justice system, growing parliamentary activism, and President Ramaphosa's commitment to set up an inquiry into SARS and lifestyle audits for politicians in the executives. There are also clear indications that an unaffordable and unneeded nuclear deal will not go ahead. This is progress, as far as we are concerned, and many of these things are things that we had called for as the SACP. Of course, ongoing vigilance on all these fronts is required. Areas that require specific attention include the intelligence services and SARS. If you like, also the broader security cluster that requires immediate attention and restructuring from our standpoint. The SACP urges the President to establish the announced Commission on SARS as soon as possible. Among the issues it should investigate are the SARS management's handling of the allegations against Jonas Makwakwa and Kellyanne Elsky, and the disbandment of the SARS High-Risk Investigation Unit. We must be understood correctly. The disbandment must be investigated. We are not calling for the disbandment. But we are saying we must investigate how come the SARS High-Risk Investigations Unit was disbanded. The exodus of senior staff should also be examined. The SACP commends President Ramaphosa for the leadership role he has now openly assumed in driving the anti-state capture agenda with energy and focus. The parasitic networks are off balance, and some leading personalities are literally on the run. Now is the time to press ahead unsparingly. As one what do you call it, circulating in WhatsApp. I'm not on WhatsApp, but I heard that it's interesting that the Guptas had captured the state, but now they are running away from being captured by the state. However, it is no secret that while President Ramaphosa's election as ANC president in December has been a key factor in tilting the balance, that election was won with the slimmest of margins. Key levels of public power and leadership structures at various levels are still loaded with personalities historically implicated in state capture networks. A reconstructed and revitalized criminal justice system must be allowed to pursue its responsibilities. A false closing of ranks, a phony ceasefire in the name of ANC unity ahead of the 2019 general elections will betray our struggle and will in fact be rejected at a popular level, not least by the ANC's own historical support base. We don't need pretenses and manufactured unity between principled comrades and those captured by the parasitic networks. It must be genuine unity based on principle. It is in this context that the SACP has called for a reconfiguration of the ANC-headed alliance. Without the support of its alliance partners, the progressive energies for renewal, now evident, will be compromised and stymied from inside the ANC itself. We don't doubt this. There are organizational practices and emerging class forces that have allowed this 106-year liberation organization, our ANC, to become the entry point for the parasitic looting of public resources. These practices and forces have not disappeared. The SACP intends to actively engage the ANC and our other allies on interventions that must now be urgently undertaken to address systemic problems at both the national and subnational levels, within our movement and within the state. The Central Committee reaffirmed the perspectives contained in our initial response to last week's budget. The SACP acknowledges that this budget occurs within a very challenging situation, not least a nearly 50 billion rand fiscal deficit and a public debt that is simply unsustainable over the medium term. It is a debt which threatens to undermine any latitude for sovereign developmental policy implementation. Demagogic and populist responses to the budget should therefore be avoided. Much, by some estimates around half of the deficit, is directly attributable to the parasitic looting of public resources by the state capture phenomenon. South Africans, particularly the working class and the poor, are having to bear the brunt of austerity measures precipitated by this parasitic looting. In particular, the SACP is extremely unhappy with the increase of VAT. It marks the possible beginnings of regressive creep. While some basic foodstuffs are zero-rated, the working class and poor do not live on bread and pap alone. And our children from poor families, when they go to school, they don't wear pap. They wear shoes, and they have to pay VAT when they buy those shoes. At least it's a first indication in the right direction that the ANC-NEC is saying expand the number of zero-rated products from VAT. It is simply untrue to argue, as the Minister of Finance did, that the 20% poorest will be unaffected by the VAT hike. What is more, other indirect taxes, like the increase in the fuel levy, will further impact on the cost of living, especially for the poor. Overall, the macroeconomic impact of the VAT increase will dampen demand, impact on GDP growth, and have negative implications for employment creation. We note the higher than inflation increases in social grants, which were announced as a compensatory measure. Apart from the extremely modest impact these increases will actually have, there is a deeper, longer-term structural concern. In essence, the budget is reaching for a social compact with the poor, in agreement with the poor. Increase social grant payments in exchange for increased VAT. This runs counter to the underlying logic of President Ramaphosa's SONA address, in which stimulating the productive economy, whether through industrialization, infrastructure development, land reform, or leveraging investment into job-creating activity. This is the critical point of emphasis. That is, investing and stimulating the productive economy, as the President is saying. The implicit logic of the social grant for VAT deal is the perpetuation of a welfarist and not active developmental approach. The SACP will be campaigning to ensure that by the time of the next budget, the VAT increase will be rolled back and other measures found to address the deficit, including active recovery of billions of stolen capital, rigorous measures to address tax base erosion and illegal capital flight, and a wealth tax. That's why, incidentally, we condemn the hypocrisy of the DA. They say they're going to march and demonstrate against VAT, yet at the same time they are against the wealth tax. So they pretend as if they are siding with the poor, when that helps them actually to deflect attention from the fact that they don't want a wealth tax. Can't ask the poor to subsidize the poor. We need the rich to be taxed so that we are able to meet the needs of ordinary people. While the current budget may buy us some relief from further ratings downgrades, there is little in it that places us on a sustained trajectory to address the real structural and economic problems in our society. The SACP welcomes the SONA announcements of three major real economy points of focus: a job summit, stakeholder consultations focus on driving serious land reform, and a financial sector summit. The real macroeconomic crisis in our country is sustained crisis levels of unemployment, close to 40% and well over 50% in the case of youth. Which is why the Job Summit cannot just focus on microeconomic interventions. An effective alignment of macroeconomic policies with the objective of achieving inclusive job-creating growth is imperative. South Africa needs increased investment in the productive sector of the economy, as opposed to a financial sector that is fueling and supporting consumption and its offshoot, which is consumerism. On the land question, the SACP welcomes what we believe to be the real intent behind the ANC's December conference resolution on expropriation without compensation as one lever to achieve land reform. While we do not believe that the existing constitutional requirement of paying just and equitable, not market compensation, has remotely been an impediment to serious land reform, in fact, the constitutional right to expropriate in the public interest has never been used for land restitution. Now, we are saying this not because we don't welcome the thrust of the resolution of the ANC. We have in the Constitution provision for expropriation with compensation determined actually by the state in many instances, which may be 10 rands for a piece of land. We never use that. So we don't want this then as a populist measure that we also go for this expropriation without compensation and we still do nothing about it. Nonetheless, the opening up of this issue presents an important opportunity to move land reform in post-apartheid South Africa out of its current confused and spineless dead end. In general, the SACP aligns itself with the findings and recommendations of the high-level panel chaired by former President Kgalema Motlanthe on the land question. There has not been serious budgeting for effective and productive land reform. The focus has been on necessary but limited land restitution at the expense of forward-looking land redistribution and security of tenure, especially for those, mainly women, often living under patriarchal arbitrary subjection in the former Bantustans, and farm workers on commercial farms. The land question has also tended to be focused on rural areas, with the critical challenge of radical transformation in urban areas, where the property market now reproduces and exacerbates apartheid space with as much cruelty as forced removals and the old group areas legislation once did. As a lead formation in spurring the convening of the first Network Financial Sector Summit in 2002, the SACP welcomes the announcement that the much-delayed second summit will now be convened in the coming months. The 2002 summit and the resulting 2004 Financial Sector Charter paved the way for some important advances in terms of debt relief and greater transparency and regulatory control over the credit bureaus, which also affects you as journalists, by the way. As the saying goes, there is no genuine black South African whose name has never been on the credit bureau. However, many other agreements have not been seriously implemented, notably commitments to community reinvestment measures. Meanwhile, campaigns and court judgments have uncovered serious abuses in the issuing of garnishee orders, in housing evictions, and the abuse of grant recipients by cash paymaster services and others. There is a general crisis of unsustainable indebtedness among the working poor and middle strata as a result of predatory credit offers by retailers and others. As I have said, we're all affected. The implosion of Steinhoff is also not unrelated to attempts to disguise the true state of its local debt book through offshoring and foreign acquisitions. Working with our allies, the SACP will use the Financial Sector Summit, amongst other things, to press for a thorough review of implementation of agreements embodied in the Charter, for interest rate caps for industrial credit and the gap housing market. The gap housing market are those who do not qualify for RDP housing, yet at the same time, they don't get given bonds by the banks. We will also call for the more effective consolidation of development finance institutions, not least a string of provincial development financial institutions, including the Eastern Cape Development Corporation, the Free State Development Corporation, Limpopo Economic Development Enterprise, and Itala in KZN. The Post Bank must be effectively launched and its role in social grants disbursement consolidated. We agree with President Ramaphosa that we cannot allow a situation where the deadline set by the Constitutional Court on this matter of the disbursement of social grants is actually violated again. Overall, the Central Committee concluded that while welcoming and fully supporting the now intensified offensive against state capture, we must also ensure that we do not imagine that a return to a pre-2009 pre-Zuma era is either possible or desirable. We must use the momentum of struggle against parasitic looting to press ahead with real, not demagogic, radical structural transformation of our economy and society. We need to be forward-looking, move decisively ahead, and boldly implement a second, more radical phase of the National Democratic Revolution by also nudging all progressive forces towards this direction. As the SACP's 14th National Congress in July last year resolved, driving these imperatives will now require, amongst other things, the consolidation of a networked left progressive front of formations. The building of a popular left front together with the reconfiguration of the alliance form the central tenets of our Congress resolution on state and popular power, and the SACP is forging ahead with its implementation. To this end, the SACP will be deepening consultation and engagements with our allies, as well as worker and other progressive formations. The Central Committee condemned in the strongest terms possible the criminal attack on and killing of police officers at Ngobo Police Station in the Eastern Cape last week, and expressed serious concern about what seems to be a trend of increasing lawlessness in some parts of our country. The SACP conveys its heartfelt condolences to the families and the 5 members of the police service, Constables Bongsen Sandlana, Kuhle Mateta, Nkosiphendule Pongo, and Zuko Nchegu, Warrant Officer Zuko Mbini, and the retired soldier Mbuzeni Fred Mpandeni. Our heartfelt condolences also go to the Police and Prison Civil Rights Union POP crew, to which all the members of the police belonged, and to the police fraternity as a whole. The SACP calls on communities to mobilize and work together with the police to fight against the scourge of crime. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Julius. I will take questions. Please just say your name and
you have some water.
You will be the first, the second, the third, and you will be the fourth. Yes, in that order.
Okay, Steve, not the from the start.
Can you please introduce yourself?
I wanted to ask...
Introduction first. Or CV, sorry, I missed that.
You were talking about personalities, you know, who are implicated in state capture, who are still occupying public office, and living still within the ANC. And you are saying it must be removed and not be kept as a function of keeping some judicial activity. But I want to ask you, have you ever spoken to the ANC and have you been specific to them? You can give us maybe the names of the leaders instead of making a general kind of statement. And also, you know, you are saying you are going to be campaigning against the VAT increase. What form will your campaign take? I mean, to ensure that it's the best, as you say. Lastly, on the issue of state power, you've been talking about this, you know, deepening consultation, but even COSATU, one of the main alliance partners of the SACP, says there will be no formal engagements about this thing. And you are saying when you announced this, you said you are going to consult with working class forces. I'm sure COSATU would be one of the most critical ones. Why almost going towards a year now after those elections were made in July, why have you not engaged with them formally? Especially there was a perspective that maybe by 2019, even contesting elections, but some were even saying this is just a scarecrow, you know, towards the ANC National Electoral Congress. And is this confirming that? Does this mean you're not going to be contesting in 2019, or you're not thinking about that? Have you made a specific resolution out of this meeting in terms of the vote of the going towards the 2019?
What was your second question?
My second question was about the head increase. And you said you want to campaign so that it's
okay.
Less. So what form will that campaign take?
Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you, Alex. My name is Muntleng from SABC. I've got 3 questions. My first question is on the announcement by the President Ramaphosa that you want to trim his cabinet. Your take and whether you've been consulted to Zemke. And then my second question is on the future of the Mr. Abrahams, the NDPP's head, the NDPP who's expected to still continue his case, the constitutional court case against the the current president on this coming Wednesday. My last one is...
what about that?
Remember the
no, what's the question?
The question is your take on the future of Mr. Abrahams, because there have been calls for him to be removed, and the fact that he still continues to take government to court coming on Wednesday. And then my third one is on the President Zuma's likely to face 87 charges from the initial 783. Your take on this? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. My name is Clement Manyatela from Eyewitness News. The question on cabinet reshuffle, that's already been asked about whether you've been consulted. But I'm also interested in finding out, if you haven't been consulted yet, I assume you want to be consulted, because you previously criticized President Jacob Zuma, former President Jacob Zuma, for failing to do that. So when you get consulted, or if you were consulted, did you at all discuss this issue? I mean, I see in your statement you say that the key levers of public power and leadership structures at various levels are still loaded with personalities implicated in state capture. Will you be pushing for those personalities to be pushed out when you get consulted on this cabinet reshuffle? The impact on that, what impact do you think this will have on the leader of the alliance, the ANC, come the elections next year? And then just lastly on...
What, say that again, Clement.
You're unhappy about the increase, the VAT increase.
Yeah.
And you're saying it's going to affect the poor. What impact do you think this will have on the leader of the alliance come the 2019 elections? And my last question is on the SACP's previous resolution to contest state power. Does the election, or did the election of Cyril Ramaphosa in any way make the SACP change their minds? If you started discussions around whether you're happy with the new leadership and the direction that the party will take, and therefore you don't see the need for the Communist Party to contest state power? Thanks.
Thank you very much. Let's first apologize to the last one there and allow you to ask.
Okay, sorry.
My name is Neo Gova. I work for Tisa Blackstar. My question is about your member, Mr. Ben Martins. I know he's been implicated in state capture and he has appeared before Parliament. Have you, as the SACP, spoken to Mr. Ben Martins about this matter, and what were the outcomes of the meeting? And also wanted to find out, in the statement here, you say that you want a reconfiguration of the ANC-headed alliance. I do understand that none of your members are part of the the newly elected NEC meeting. Have you discussed this with the leadership of the ANC? And also on the cabinet reshuffle, although my question has been asked, have your members been approached, or has this decision to reshuffle the cabinet been discussed by Mr. Ramaphosa? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. This side,
Alex,
the last one.
we are overloading us now.
We are taking the last one. This
thank you. My name is Maduma Lizon from Man Over. I see most of the questions have already been covered. On the cabinet.
Raise your hand, Matuma. Where are you seated? Yeah. Oh, okay, okay.
On the cabinet one, I wanted to ask, in terms of the composition, what would the SSCP like to see? What kind of cabinet you want to see that would take the country forward? Mr. Nzimande, would you consider going back to cabinet if you were invited? Also, whether the SSCP would campaign for the ANC. I mean, the elections are few or about 14 months down the line. Given your resolution in the special Congress last year. Lastly, you have been talking about the reconfigured alliance for years now. So, what is it that you are looking for this time around? I know that last time you wanted the alliance to be the center of power. This never happened. So, what is it that you are looking for?
Thank you very much.
With my ugly handwriting, this is 2 pages of questions. We've been speaking to the ANC, frankly, ad nauseum on state capture, and the Guptas specifically. Over the last how many years? 4. Ad nauseum. And to some of the leaders of the ANC, it looked very clear that this thing went in, this was one side, and got out the other side. So it's not that it's something... In fact, even before we raised this thing publicly, we raised it within the alliance fora as well as bilaterally with the ANC, including the damage, for instance, that the Gupta family is making on former President Zuma, on the ANC, and on the credibility and respect for our government, including our national sovereignty. No one, absolutely no one, can blame the SACP for having kept quiet on this matter. You can go and ask our allies. They will confirm. No, we are not only starting now to consult on state power. We have already raised these matters in the alliance on our resolution. And there's an agreement now on the table that we must produce a discussion document on what is meant by reconfiguration of the alliance. And that's what we are working on as the SACP at the moment. We had a version that was tabled at the Central Committee this last weekend, which we will improve, work on, and then at an appropriate time take it to the alliance. I'm sure that paper, we will also, I can't speak for the alliance, but I'm sure that it wouldn't be a problem that as we finish a version of the draft document that we make it public as to what are the issues regarding reconfiguration of the alliance. So I can't answer definitively on the content, Matumo, of that reconfiguration as of now, because it's in the process of being discussed. But we can tell you quite a few things that we're concerned about. The primary issue is that the alliance wants to function as if it's before 1994. The alliance can't function today, post-1994, as if it's pre-1994. Why? Because there's a big change post-1994. Because the organization that has the alliance, the ANC, is now in power in government. When you could ask also ourselves, we are. But it's the leading formation that is leading government. And that introduces a whole range of issues. By the way, part of the shenanigans we see, largely in the ANC, but also to a certain extent in the alliance, is caused by our problematic adjustment to this post-1994 reality of having access to state power. That in itself requires that we re-look at the alliance and how it's functioning, which would mean also, how do we promote democratic consensus-making processes in the alliance? There's still too much unilateralism. Now, I don't want to talk about myself, But let's make an example. The Premier of Northwest fires our provincial secretary from the executive. What kind of an alliance is that? Which political party that respects itself can just allow its leaders to be treated like that when there is a claim that there is no alliance? You can see that there is no alliance. And we are saying as the SACP, we can't continue an alliance that has not been reconfigured. And it's going to pose difficulties in terms of our participation in the elections in support of the ANC. We want to be honest with that, if that matter doesn't get addressed. But we are pleased that the ANC has not dismissed it, has said, let's discuss it. So we are working towards using a good part of the first half of this year actually to discussing that thing. Hopefully that we will find closure, because our resolution says we will either contest separately or contest elections within a reconfigured alliance. That would mean we support the ANC, but the modus operandi of the alliance has to change. And that the alliance also has got to treat its partners with respect. We are not threatening. You know what may also happen? I'm not saying that's definite, but it's possible. It's a few Metsimahulus that were, and through Metsimahulu we showed that we are not scared, but at the same time we are conscious as the Communist Party. We don't want to divide the alliance. We don't want the ANC to lose power, but provided we are we do that in the context of a reconfigured alliance. But where the Communist Party feels that it's being marginalized, is being treated with utter contempt, we can't rule out other Metsimahulus. That is why we feel it's better to go the route of engagement. Now, I think that takes care of quite a number of questions that related to this. But if we haven't, my comrades are also going to add on this or the others. So it's not a scarecrow's view. We've never had scarecrows as the Communist Party, by the way. We speak the truth. We face something. If we can do something, we say so. If we can't, we say so too. We can't be scaring our ally. Not at all. Now, the question from me, SABC, we support the trimming of cabinet. We definitely do. 35 ministers and 37 deputy ministers. That's too much. So we agree with that. Of course, we understand, as the president said, it's not something that he can do when he announces a cabinet reshuffle now. We don't know when he's going to do that. Because we will also have to have proper study, you know, of which departments can you merge, for instance. And what would that mean? What would that require? At the very latest, we hope that after next year's election, then you should actually see something being implemented, which is not very far from now, but we support that in principle. Look, Mr. Abrahams, as an individual, as a South African citizen, he has his own legal rights. He has appealed the ruling of the High Court that he cannot continue being the NDPP, National Director of Public Prosecutions. He has appealed. I think that it's only fair that we allow those processes to unfold legally. I'm told, in fact, the Constitutional Court hearing is this week. You should know better than I do. On the 28th, yes. So we will know sooner as to what is actually going to happen. We don't want to prejudge that. So is the issue of the 783 counts that are supposed to be facing former President Zuma. That matter actually is in the hands of the NPA. So also we don't want to jump the gun. We will only respond once the NPA has taken a decision. Clement, have we been consulted about cabinet? Not yet, but we hope we will be consulted. We are aware, certainly, that the president is discussing within the structures of the ANC, possibly the officials, we hope that before he announces, we will also be consulted, because we do also have our own views, not just on names, but on certain urgent things that we think needs to be done. Like, for instance, doing away with rogue intelligence units in the state. That's a big issue. Unless we deal with that, we are not going to be able to deal with the rest. And also what other interventions need to be made in state-owned enterprises and so on. So if we are consulted, we are not only just going to discuss names, we also want to discuss certain things that we think, as a matter of urgency, needs to be done. And that would be our view. Well, names, no, we're not going to go around here brandishing people's names, you know, as to who should be removed, you know, and so on. Some of them, you know them, it's clear, you know. So, in fact, I should be asking you, who do you think should be removed from cabinet? Just like I should be asking Matumu, if I'm approached to go to cabinet, what do you think I should do? Should I say yes or should I say no? Why? It's easy for you sitting there to say I should say no or yeah. Anyway, I'm pulling your leg. I'm pulling your leg myself. What we are campaigning for now is that hopefully this VAT increase should be reversed at some stage. Immediately that would be ideal, but at some stage it will have to be reversed. You don't start playing with this and also at the same time running away from taxing the rich. That's why we are also at the same time will be campaigning for a wealth tax. No, the election of President Ramaphosa does not change our resolutions. I hope I've explained enough now about our resolutions and reconfiguration and what it means, and further engagement with our allies around the paper and document that I was talking about, amongst other things, by the way. We have spoken to Comrade Ben Martins. Initially, we were under the impression that he was avoiding going to the committee. We spoke to him, and then he assured us that he will go to the committee, and indeed he did go to the committee. And we had said, as the SACP, we would like that these processes that are underway arrive at a determination. Who is right, for instance, between Comrade Ben Martins and that lady? What's her name?
Ms. Daniels.
Ms. Daniels. We don't have ways and means of determining. It's two different stories that contradict each other. We do not have means of determining who is right, who is wrong. So the processes that are underway through, amongst others, the portfolio committee processes, we hope they will help us to then arrive at a conclusion as the SACP on what is to be done. But we did engage with him. Now, non-election of SACP leaders onto the NEC. What was the question now?
Yeah, the fact that none of the members have been elected into the NEC. So going forward, how do they consult?
I'm having because there are many central committee members in the NEC.
Yes.
Come again?
There are a number of central committee members who are were elected onto the NEC. Let me just run through them quickly. It's Comrade Jeff Khatebu, by the way, was also at our central committee this last weekend's one. It's Comrade Sdumo, who sits on the central committee. Comrade Zingiswalo also sits on the central committee. Comrade Gwede is a member of our central committee. Who else?
Comrade Pumulo.
And Comrade Pumulo Maswale is also a member of our central committee. But we don't want to be like, what do you call it, that we are spinning. Yes, it's not insignificant that SACP officials, all right, which is a correct way of putting it, were not elected. Look, we said we accept the outcome of the ANC conference, but this does pose a challenge. We don't get elected onto the NEC by virtue of being a general secretary or a national chairperson or a deputy national chairperson of the SACP. But at the same time, you cannot run away from that. We know that a lot of our structures are very unhappy about that. It does pose problems in the sense that historically the way the alliance has functioned, especially the relationship between the ANC and the SACP, we influence each other, even by sitting in both structures, those who have got dual membership. It's helpful that I come to give a political report to a central committee as general secretary, having participated in a 3-day NEC, because I know exactly what's the thinking, I know exactly the decisions that have been taken, the nuances behind those decisions and so on. So that, and also that through that we are able to influence the ANC, we are also able to be influenced by the ANC, by sitting in those structures. It does pose a challenge because there is a very real danger that we may start drifting apart. So I don't know whether we wanted anything more. Otherwise, there's nothing we can do about that. The ANC conference has gone past it. The only thing which we said last time, we only hope that this doesn't mark an ANC that's starting on an anti-communist road. Well, in that case, you mustn't pity the party, you must pity the ANC, because if we don't believe that's the case, by the way, but if that is the case, then it's a problem, because usually when you start dealing with communists in that way, it's your sure route to decline. We have no doubt about that. All organizations that have tried that. The one thing unique about South Africa is that you cannot run away from the reality that we have a history and a tradition of strong communist organization and presence of communism. And it's not about to change anytime soon, if ever. Yeah, I think that Matumu have answered our issue on the composition of cabinet. What's our approach? If and when we get consulted, we would like to get consulted. There is no doubt about that as to how we would actually approach this. Well, I have not been made an offer to go back to cabinet. I will cross that bridge, or as one politician was quoted saying, I will double-cross that bridge when I come to it. No, I won't double-cross. Communists. Communists do not double-cross anything. You know, we'll deal with that when it arises, you know. Much as if we are approached to join cabinet, it's a cabinet that is led by the ANC. But still, we still approach it as an alliance cabinet, which means also the party will have to have a say. You know, not just myself. We'll have to have a say, you know, I mean, do you go back to cabinet or not? Okay, come in. Come in.
No, I think I want to express the party position, not Comrade Bates' position.
Yes, yes.
The party position is that this is an alliance-led government. It's not just ANC-led government. Of course, it is expressed through the leadership of the ANC, but it's an alliance-led government. That's why we don't contest elections separately from the ANC on our own. We participate in the elections for the election of the ANC. And Comrade Blade is the leader of the Communist Party. That is in participating in government through the alliance process led by the ANC. So you remember that he was unceremoniously removed from cabinet by President Zuma, for which even leaders of the ANC were just informed on his taking the decision. And we rejected that as a Communist Party. And we said Comrade Blade must remain a member of parliament. And he was not removed from cabinet because he was incompetent. If anything, he was one of the most competent ministers. So in that case, we felt that he has good capacity. He can serve at that level. And when we engage with this matter, for which we will welcome consultations, in fact, it should not happen without our consultation. We'll express ourselves seriously if it happens without our consultations. There's no doubt about that. Number one on the list, if we were to participate in that process, will be our General Secretary. He's a member of parliament, and he has capacity. So that's where we will take it from. So this is not Comrade Blade's own positions, the position of the Communist Party. He will nuance that because he doesn't want to get involved in that Matuma. But that's the party position. So this is our leader. And if they, because National Executive, by the way, it's where the practice of alliance policy is implemented through the instruments of the state. And you can have your key ally outside of that particular process and participate through proxies. No, it can't happen that way. There will be a manner in which, going forward, the reconfiguration process will actually have to resolve that. And we must also indicate, Nopal, that we have started the discussion on the reconfiguration. Comrade Chris presented, you mustn't run after him and think that he has got some document. It was a Central Committee document. He presented this question to the Central Committee. So we had discussions on the reconfiguration of the alliance. That is the party perspective. We will then share it with our alliance and develop an alliance process of reconfiguration. So that part of the participation of our General Secretary in Cabinet and even other officials deals with the core of the reconfiguration process going forward. President Zuma was unhappy about them because they question things and so forth, and he felt he can do wrong things and they keep quiet, and that's why he felt he needed some isolation of some sort. But we already want to appreciate that President Ramaphosa has already expressed willingness to consult the alliance. We discussed together as the alliance the interventions at ESCOM, collectively as the alliance through his initiative and leadership. So we appreciate that process from the beginning. And we want that momentum to be kept going forward so that there's inclusiveness of alliance. We want to take responsibility. For instance, we're not consulted on the VAT thing. And we're unhappy about it. That's why we're expressing it here in our statement. And the Central Committee was clear. But we must also indicate that the VAT already becomes law. So if you are constitutionalist, you don't necessarily have to accept the VAT, but you have to accept the law. So it already becomes law. That's why we will campaign so that in the next term, if this decision is reversed.
Yeah.
Just the bilateral we held with Kasatu about our Congress resolutions. There was a question.
Oh, yes.
I wanted to go back to that, but no, fine.
No, we've had some discussions with our alliance partners. In fact, the fact that the reconfiguration of the alliance process is now part of the alliance decision. It's no longer an SACP decision. It's now an alliance decision. It's a consequence of our engagement with the alliance. We've developed what we call the roadmap to implement our Congress decision. And by the way, it's also important for you as journalists to read our decisions proper, the resolution. The resolution talks to the party actively participating in the elections, and already we are actively participating in the elections, but through the ANC process. We set up electoral teams, we run across the country throughout both national and local government elections. We've already set up our own, the current one for the 2019 elections. We've already appointed, he's sitting in the management team, Comrade Chris, of the ANC, appointed by us already to go and sit there to prepare for the elections. We have our own campaigns team. We've already started that. We do that all the time with every coming elections. Now we have said this time, it must be done through a reconfigured alliance. And we are debating that now within the alliance. There's already been tabled. So it's not like we haven't had a high-level big meeting that we have maybe publicized with COSATU for the discussion of the roadmap. But we have had discussions with them at a CEC level and party central committee level, post our Congress. We shifted certain things, but of course this year we've had several meetings postponed because of the rapid developments in our country, not least the process leading to the removal of Comrade Zuma. So we shifted many other things. But we are committed to roll out this process. The Central Committee also expressed the need that the Secretariat must speed up the engagement process with our alliance partners. So we'll be engaged in that process. We are not going back on that particular decision. But the decision read correctly says we will participate in the elections through a reconfiguration of the alliance process or outside, which will be a new mechanism. And that mechanism has not yet been rolled out. That could be a broad patriotic front. We have expressed here how we have achieved some of the initiatives that we have taken in the concept of that particular front. But as there are two fronts, the second one is called the Progressive Popular Front of key issues that are affecting our country, whether it's the national health insurance, whether it's the land questions, the VAT issue now, transformation of the financial sector. We'll be working with all those forces to make sure that these things are done, but also within the alliance as well.
What I wanted to concede, though, so that I think that the second Deputy General Secretary is hinting at that, we would have liked to have moved faster than where we are between July last year, our Congress, and now, in terms of discussing our resolutions and matters. But there were speed bumps which did not enable us to move as fast. And the one biggest speed bump was the ANC December conference.
Yeah.
Because the ANC itself was in such a position that it was really unable to engage with us meaningfully. Even other formations, even COSATU itself, said, well, look, let's see what comes out of the ANC conference. So there was one speed bump on the way, which sort of slowed down the pace at which we would have liked to consult. But that must not distract from the fact that we have raised these things, we've discussed them, it's not enough, and we've agreed on how we are going to take that discussion forward.
Thank you very much. I hope the discussion was sufficient to the questions. Before I close, let me observe if there is any last question. I just want to okay, let's allow you to become the first, and then we will be set on, and then we will close. Yeah, let's, because that's a follow-up.
Yeah. So, Mr. Mobay, you say that the party position is that in the...
Start afresh, Matumo.
Okay. I'm saying the deputy GS is saying what the SACP would like to see through this reconfigured alliance. The GS participating, for example, in cabinet. Would you also want him to participate in the NEC, or you want one or two officials to participate in the NEC? I don't know whether, I mean, in what way. I mean, we know that Figilem Babinda was not NEC, but a plan was made for him to be there. So, is this what the SACP wants going forward?
No, Matuba.
Let's take the last question.
Let's take.
Thank you. Thank you. Sidi Madia from News 24. In the statement, you speak about a false closing of ranks, a phony ceasefire in the name of ANC unity, and how that shouldn't be done in the fight against state capture. So my question to you is that, you know, we have a bit of they call it a Rama euphoria. There's this excitement, and we've seen some kind of movement, and people have praised the ANC thus far for what looks like a fight against state capture. So my question to the SACP is that, do you believe it's genuine? Because it almost feels from the statement that you don't think what we're seeing, even the partnerships, you know, where you have a Senzo who's supposed to represent one faction working with Dakota Lokweta who represents another. It seems that the SACP doesn't buy that story, like what we're seeing within the movement and the fight outside against state capture. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, let me start with this point that, firstly, the consideration by the Central Committee was that there were people that, for instance, President Zuma just targeted because they joined the SACP's campaigns and programs to deal with the parasitic networks that have captured the state. And they were victimized. Nkabisi, Praveen, Derek, and it was quite clear President Zuma was on an offensive against those who were differing with him. He was very careful on how he approached Comrade Nzimande, but finally did it. So, but it was the same thing.
Yeah, I sat for 2 years with my briefcase next to the door.
Yeah, being threatened, shut up or else you are out and so forth. And the party couldn't shut up, because we couldn't give away our national independence to these forces. And we are glad that now those forces are running away. But we still feel strategically part of reconfiguration of the alliance operations, including of government, should be to deal with these parasitic networks. So that's very important. And we do have a champion of those. It's here, one of them. This is the one, Matuma, who dealt with this, who pursued these parasitic networks vehemently and paid the price. Now we're saying, if there's commitment from this new leadership to deal with that, they do have the members. You don't have to. I'll put them in priority on the list. You know, it's of course I'll start with my general secretaries, Blade, it's Praveen. I'm just giving an example of those that went for these networks and they paid the price for it. It's even worse. I can tell you partly, of course we accept the ANC, NEC outcomes, but it's up to you to judge. We can't enforce on the ANC to take him to, or in the reconfiguration to take him to the NEC. That's a decision of the ANC, NEC. He's a member of the ANC in his own right. He served at its highest level. So he's capable, he can serve at that level, there's no doubt about it. But that's a decision of the ANC. We're not proposing it, per se. So what we're simply saying is that the point that he explained, the infusion of ideas between the two organizations, no doubt has been affected in terms of at operational level. But we don't want to simply say that if he goes back to the NEC, therefore this solves problems of consultation. We still want democratic seeking consultations of the alliance across the board at national, at provincial, regional and district and branch levels. In fact, we also want to build the alliance from below. We're still committed to that particular process. So that's what the reconfiguration process will be seeking to do. I can also say, go and read the Alliance Summit Declaration of 2008, May 2008. It outlines there even how the alliance should operate. And President Zuma, on driving this parasitic network agenda, decided to forego that. He postponed meetings even unilaterally. So we're going back to those things for discussions in order to strengthen the alliance and its capacity to lead the national democratic revolution. We ultimately ended up taking the measures, for instance, to organize all social forces outside even of the alliance in order to keep the mission of the NDR alive.
Yeah, Tsidi, I don't have to add. Unopala has done well, because I was actually committing a mistake of articulating my own personal position and not the positions of the SACP. Maybe you are a comrade city, so I shouldn't.
Yeah, it's okay.
I shouldn't retract that. You know?
Yeah.
Look, we believe that Comrade President Ramaphosa is really serious about the need for a fight against state capture. We don't doubt him. He has already shown his hand, as we outlined here, in a couple of places, and he continues to do so. And of course, there are also very good leaders and members of the ANC who also feel disdain for state capture and who believe that it must be fought. As the ANC, we are willing to work with those. But what we are saying, we can't forge false unity. What would be false unity? Unity between those who support state capture and those who are fighting anti-state capture, and say we are maintaining ANC unity, our people will see through that. That's all what we are saying. If that helps to clarify your question. That is one, that would be one manifestation of false unity.
Thank you very much for attending our press briefing. We can't stop thanking you as a association. As I said before we start, the declaration of 2008 makes it very clear that we still have the mics as the political center and give collective leadership to the National Democratic Thank you very much.
Still listening, Esther.
Yes, I would ask the leadership not to leave. We will divide the work between them. Those who have requested interviews, we are asking you to remain behind.
Yeah, but there is a time limit.
Of course.
I have to be out
New
of.
York to China, it is well understood.
I have to be out of here by 1 o'clock. Okay.
All right, live there from a briefing held by the SACP after they had their Central Committee meeting over the weekend, where the party took stock of recent political developments, including, amongst other things, the recall of former President Jacob Zuma. Let me quickly take you through some of the main points coming out of that briefing. The SACP has called for what they've said will be a reconfiguration of the ANC, or of the ANC-headed alliance, rather. So what that reconfiguration will look like, that's yet to be established, but the primary issue is to get what Blade and Zemke has called a functioning alliance. So this could mean that they'll contest the elections independently or support the ANC within the alliance. So we have to wait to see what how they reconfigure their alliance there. The SACP also saying that they will be campaigning to ensure that by the time of the next budget, that the VAT increase will be rolled back. They were quite vocal in their disappointment of the VAT increase after last week's budget. They've welcomed the SONA announcements of 3 major real economy points of focus, which will be the Job Summit, stakeholder consultations focused on driving serious land reform, and a financial sector summit. They've also said that the Central Committee, their meeting over the weekend, concluded that they are fully supporting of the now intensified offensive against state capture, and that they want a return of a pre-2009, pre-Zuma era, that they have said that this would be the most desirable thing. And they've welcomed what they've called the real intent behind the ANC's December conference resolution on expropriation of land without compensation, as a step closer to achieving land reform. And then on the looming cabinet reshuffle, the SACP have said that they have not been consulted on this potential cabinet reshuffle. All right, let's take a quick break, and then I'll have a quick look at some of your day's top stories up next.
Our stories.
How do I begin?
Our lives. When all seems to fail, we will raise our voices a bit louder for our justice.
I went into absolute shock. My whole body was shaking. I couldn't hold a phone, but there he was. I couldn't believe the nonchalant that they were still in the area 2 weeks later.
And in times when the justice system is not able to help us with our individual battles.
I'm willing to do anything. What are you doing? Nothing. Feeling sorry for yourself? No, it's not an option.
These are our stories on Cutting Edge Channel 404.
Welcome to Media Monitor, the show that analyzes the big news stories that made headlines. We bring you robust discussions on stories that made headlines in the week, where we interact with media analysts to unpack these top stories. Join me every Sunday morning from 9 to 10 Central African Time as I bring you riveting news and analysis.
Stay tuned to Media Monitor every Sunday from 9 a.m.
Welcome back. There's a heightened security presence outside the Ngobo Magistrates Court in the Eastern Cape. This as 13 suspects are expected to appear in court at 2 o'clock this afternoon. The suspects are linked to the murder of 5 police officers and a retired soldier. Locals have also been seen converging in their numbers outside the court to catch a glimpse of the suspects. The suspects were arrested on Friday night following a shootout with police at a church, the Man Over Seven Ministries. 7 suspects were shot dead in that gun battle. Meanwhile, Parliament has described as unfortunate the comments that were made by the chairperson of the CRL Rights Commission in relation to the killings in Ngobo. Parliamentary spokesperson Moloto Motapo says the comments demonstrate a lack of understanding of the constitutional mandate of Parliament. The Commission said it hoped Parliament would now fast-track the regulation of the religious sector after the killings, allegedly by members of the Man Over Seven Ministry. And here in Gauteng, Premier David Makhura says the election of President Ramaphosa offers the government a great opportunity to redeem itself after the past few years that have been characterized by bad governance and state capture. Delivering the State of the Province address in the Gauteng legislature in Johannesburg, Makhura said eradicating unemployment must be prioritized in order to achieve transformative economic growth. He's also committed to strengthening partnerships with the private sector to help create 1 million jobs for young people. And he's also committed to ensuring that criminal action is taken against those found guilty in the Life Isidimeni tragedy. He said the fight against corruption and maladministration in government will be intensified.
There are clear signs already that a new dawn is upon us, thus instilling this renewed confidence in our country's economy. All key players in the economy, including labor, business, and consumers, are willing to work together under the leadership of President Ramaphosa to get South Africa working so that our economy can work for all our people. This new dawn should usher in the total renewal of the public service and fundamental change in the way citizens experience governance, including strengthening accountability and integrity of public officials and public servants, so that we can avoid fatal disasters such as the Life Isidimeni tragedy. The new dawn is about drawing inspiration from the life of Nelson Mandela, who had an amazing ability to turn adversity into opportunity.
The ANC's top 6 will meet today. This follows yesterday's meeting by the party's decision-making body. It was speculated that, among other points of deliberation, there could be a discussion about a cabinet redeployment. National spokesperson Pule Mabe says he can neither confirm nor deny the rumour